Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you are watching a movie on what if Naruto was betrayed by Kakashi in waves. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
As Team 7 had been told, the mission to Wave was not as easy as it seemed. Not even near. Instead of the bandits jumping the elderly man they were guarding, they all got missing Nin. Kakashi Hitaki easily defeated two of them, the Demon Brothers, while Naruto only sustained a minor cut to his hand that was promptly bandaged. When Tazuna revealed everything to them, and I mean everything, the group chose to press forward with the mission rather than retreat. Each of them had a motivation for wanting to go on. Sasuke to kill his brother, Sakura because Sasuke stayed, Kakashi because of a secret order given to him, and Naruto to defend the people of Wave from Gato. They all continued on until Zabuza Momochi, the demon of the mist, confronted them, at which point they engaged in combat. Once they overcame the man, a hunter Nin took him away, though Kakashi didn't think the Nin was seeking any sort of bounty. A week or so later, Team 7, without Naruto, was at the bridge protecting Tazuna from the attacks of that hunter Nin and Zabuza. Much to the Uchiha's disgust, Naruto eventually appeared after dealing with some goons at Tsunami's house and assisted Sasuke in their fight. After using Sasuke as a human pincushion, they managed to hold off the hunter Nin until Naruto used the power of the Kyuubi within him to defeat the hunter Nin. Kakashi thought that this was the ideal time to carry out his covert mission. After Naruto's mask broke, she became preoccupied with finding out who the hunter Nin was. Kakashi took advantage of this distraction to throw a kunai with an explosive tag, which exploded seconds later, right into the back of Naruto's skull. Haku was also engulfed in the explosion, and the two perished in a ball of fire that shook the whole bridge. The smug expression on Kakashi's face as he took their lives was the last thing they both saw before said explosion claimed their lives. After witnessing the entire incident, Zabuza became enraged and attempted to cut off Kakashi's head, but the Junin managed to evade the swordsman's furious blow and paid the price. After trapping Zabuza with his dogs, Kakashi struck the man in the chest with his lightning blade. Kakashi whispered to the man when he finished, "You can see your whore and that demon in hell, you son of a bitch." At those words, Zabuza became extremely angry and tried, with all of his remaining strength, to take action. Anything at all. But time was running out for him, and he had no chance of revenge or even retribution for losing the only person in the world he truly cared about. Gato and his men arrived to attack after Zabuza was killed, only to discover that everyone in the town was present and prepared to fight to the death for their house. Taking advantage of the chaos that ensued, Kakashi managed to get Sasuke off the bridge and into safety. He was aware that he would receive a substantial reward from the civilian and shinobi councils upon his successful completion of the mission. With the demon vanquished, the leaf would flourish both now and in the future. "I avenged you, sensei." Watching the battle unfold, Kakashi thought to himself, pretending to be exhausted from chakras to make it all seem real. The business tycoon was killed instantly by Inari's arrow that entered his eye, changing the course of the bloody and fierce battle on the bridge. Many citizens had died at the hands of Gato's men. The thugs withdrew and left Wave permanently after realizing that their meal ticket was essentially void and that the people of Wave had now gained some perspective. When the battle was over and everyone was celebrating their win, Inari was the first to notice that one particular blonde was missing from the picture that had made it all possible. Upon questioning the silver-haired Junin about Naruto's whereabouts, Kakashi informed him that the demon had lost control over his own power and that his only option was to kill him. Neither Inari nor the residents of Wave could believe such a lie. The people were so shocked by all of this that they drove the Konoha ninja from their nation for good, saying the blonde who had saved their village was not a demon at all. Sakura had to ask her sensei what exactly had happened as Kakashi carried Sasuke on his back. Why did he refer to Naruto as a demon, and what did he mean when he said that Naruto had lost control? She was informed that Naruto was a demon, but she never received a clear explanation of why. She chose not to hate Naruto because her own parents would never explain to her why she should, and she saw him only as a knuckleheaded and erratic ninja. She was informed by Kakashi that Naruto was in possession of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the same fox that murdered hundreds of innocent people 12 years prior. He thought Sakura would be ecstatic to hear that the demon was defeated and Konoha was once more safe after his explanation, but he received the opposite response. He was scolded by Sakura for thinking Naruto was always that way. It's a common misconception that Sakura detested Naruto. Neither did she love him. She considered him to be a very nice man with a very good heart, but she also saw him as an annoying, hyperactive, unpredictable knucklehead. Though he might have annoyed her, she would have welcomed his irritation as a change of pace from Sasuke's usual behavior. Sakura's mother had, more like coerced her, told her to try to reconcile with the last Uchiha ever since his brother had killed his clan. At first, she wasn't really interested in, and the emo teen's incessant disregard and insults just made her angrier every day she spent with him. Sakura's abrupt shift in attitude was completely unexpected for the one-eyed Junin. He assumed she would be all for it, but in reality, she was upset about Naruto's death. If she developed a backbone and chose to turn on the Hokage, this could be disastrous for the council's plans. Even though he knew her mother, Mebuki, would be incensed at this, Kakashi would have to silence her. Kakashi swiftly moved behind Sakura and snapped her neck like a twig, not wanting to take the chance. Her apparent sensei had said, "You should have hated the demon like the rest of us," the last thing she had heard. Now go join him. She would carry this image with her until the last vestige of life left in her body, at which point she would pass away and join her unjustly slain teammate in the afterlife. She would only speak to him with these two words if she ever saw him there. "I'm sorry. Location unknown." Now that was the final strike. There was a loud voice in the big room. "I'm pretty much done with those people and their power complex. I'll demonstrate real power to them directly if that's what they want to see." A second figure gently grasped his shoulder and spoke to him in a soothing tone before the first one could act. "Relax, my brother. Even though I agree with you in this case, this is not the proper approach." The first figure sighed with frustration and gave in, seemingly having the desired effect on his brother. "All right, now. Even though I would love to send our four souls back to their world to right the wrongs of those who have wronged them, I am not permitted to do so. They have been wronged in numerous ways by numerous people." "What?" Anger and disgust erupted from the second figure. "Why not?" The first figure removed his hand from his brother's shoulder and moved a short distance away, with his brother trailing behind. They strolled for a little while before coming to a stop in front of another figure, this one wearing a dark cloak and having a skull for a face. "Brother." Starting toward the third was the first figure. "I take it that you already have them now?" "Yes, brother." The third figure began, then let out a dejected sigh. "Sadly, Zabuza Momochi, one of them, has committed numerous transgressions and evil deeds throughout the world. I won't allow him to participate in your scheme. I apologize, my brother." "It is all right, Shinigami." The first sighed again and said to the now named Shinigami, "Yami." The other figure moved forward and took on the name Yami. "Yes, brother? Allow Zabuza Momochi's soul to suffer as little as possible, even though he may have done many horrible things and isn't considered a soul worthy of forgiveness. Recognized?" With hesitation, Yami gave his brother a nod. "I will try." The first figure gave Yami a nod before continuing. "In time, they will be needed again, though I sense another grave soul will be betrayed soon after." The figure let out a sigh, realizing how sad the scene was for him at that precise moment. Konoha Gakure. It had been longer than a few days since Team 7's wave mission went awry. With the exception of a few, all of Konoha rejoiced upon hearing of Kakashi's return and celebrated the demon brat's demise. All of Konoha celebrated the demon's death with a festival, and they declared this day a holiday. Naturally, this infuriated the Hokage, who in his own wrath broke up the whole thing. Hiruzen also demanded that Kakashi explain everything to him about what transpired and how the mission went so badly wrong so quickly that two of his genin ended up dead. Kakashi had maintained the lie that Naruto had lost control of the demon inside of him and gone on a killing rampage, and he was now adding a new lie to it involving Sakura. Before killing Sakura, he also killed the Hunter Nin and Zabuza, and the only way to stop him was to slay him by stabbing him through the chest with a lightning blade. For the duration of this meeting, at the very least, it would be a choice he would live to regret. Hiruzen didn't buy it, so he dismissed the Junin and temporarily dissolved Team 7. The news that her daughter had perished at the hands of that demon wasn't sitting too well with Mebuki Haruno. She had always wanted her daughter to wed the Uchiha so that they could benefit from his wealth and influence and grow as a family, but since she was gone, that plan was no longer viable. You would think that all of this would break a mother to learn of her daughter's death, but Mebuki wasn't. After a brief period of mourning for her daughter, she would devise a new scheme to obtain the Uchiha family's wealth for herself. Here we have the mother of the year. However, Hinata Hyuga took the brunt of it the hardest. Everyone knew about her secret crush on the blonde, so it was not shocking when she learned of his passing. She yearned for him so much, but before she could ever express her true feelings to him, he left. She felt as though the only hope left in her dark and hopeless life had vanished, leaving her only a shattered remnant of the person she had once been. This was viewed by Hiyashi and the Hyuga elders as a weakness, and they desired to fully eradicate it from her. She had been trained with nothing less than severe beatings and torturous sessions. She would fight her father and then her younger sister every day in an attempt to break her heart's attachment to him and everything else he stood for. Though the elders were thinking of bestowing upon her the caged bird seal, Hiyashi declined, thinking that she would eventually change. The Branch family arranged a match between Neji and Hinata, seeing this as their chance to demonstrate their strength. The rules were straightforward. The Branch family would have more influence over Hyuga matters if Neji prevailed. That wouldn't occur if Hinata prevails, in which case she would be given the order to kill Neji. Should Neji also win, the same command would be given. The fight went as planned. Neji was unrelenting in his beating of Hinata, even after she had previously forfeited, and he did not even try to back down. Nobody made an effort to assist Hinata in any manner. She was weak and her love for the demon was a cancer that would spread to the Hyuga family, so they all looked at her with contempt and hatred. Hiyashi halted Neji's attack without a second's hesitation and expressed his profound disappointment by glancing down at his oldest daughter's shattered and broken form. "You should be ashamed of your weakness." As she wept at his remarks and the expressions of people she would have loved to call family but never did, Hiyashi spoke to her. "I had high hopes for you, Hinata, but now, the future of the Hyuga now goes to your sister." With a sly smile on her face, Hanabi approached her elder sister's downed form as soon as she heard that. "Enjoy the afterlife, my failure of a daughter." And with that, Hiyashi killed her almost immediately by striking her in the heart with a Juken strike. One word was the last thing Hinata could have possibly whispered at that precise moment. Naruto-kun. And on that day, Hinata Hyuga experienced betrayal from her own family. Again, unknown location. The first figure sighed, realizing that Shinigami had just been betrayed, as his brother had predicted, and that he had just received a new soul. He turned to face him and saw the melancholy in those unadulterated white eyes. That was the last straw, brothers. The figure revealed to Yami and Shinigami that Hinata Hyuga's soul had also appeared to them. "Now, we must do what must be done." Yami and Shinigami nodded in agreement as they got ready for the ritual. These four would change the shinobi world, even though it would take them some time to finish. They would serve as the catalyst to start a fire that would consume the old world's corruption and, like the legendary phoenix of old, rise again from the ashes. The girl forced into things by an uncaring mother who never cared for her, the boy who has lived in fear for his own life as the Kyuubi jailer, and the girl who was completely destroyed by her own clan are all examples of this. These four would effect that change. They just had to relocate to a new planet first. Los Noches. A meeting was currently in progress regarding the scheme devised by a certain Rouge Soul Reaper who was a bit too obsessed with becoming a god. And the espada was one of them. The Hueco Mundo's 10 strongest hollows. Their leader was seated at the very edge of the long table around which they were all seated. The brown-haired Soul Reaper had been describing the course of the Winter War and the precise preparations that the Soul Reapers would undertake. With one exception, most of the people in the room were paying attention to what he had to say. Naturally, this specific espada was the most lazy of all of them. Coyote Stark was the first espada. Yes, he sat at the table like the other espada, but he was mainly daydreaming and barely listening to what Aizen was saying. He had covered his eyes with his shaggy brown hair to avoid drawing Aizen's notice, but he suspected the man knew Stark wasn't paying attention and didn't care. With that man, it was difficult to tell, but he carried on as usual. Stark wasn't paying attention because he's been experiencing strange dreams every time he goes to sleep lately. This short child with spiky blonde hair and vibrant blue eyes would haunt his dreams. He had whisker marks on his cheeks and was decked out in this hideous orange jumpsuit. The child's smile was infectious, perhaps even greater than when Grimjow and Neutra would spar, but it was genuine and kind. That smile was warm and joyful, but there was a serious problem with it. It appeared strained. It appeared to be a tactful smile meant to trick people rather than a genuine one. Stark was completely perplexed by this because he couldn't comprehend it at all. If this child's smile wasn't genuine, why was he forcing it on his face, and who was he even? Tia Haribel, the third espada, was thinking along the same lines. True, she was almost the most devoted to Aizen, but she had also been bothered by something for a while. She has been experiencing frequent flashes of an ocean with a young girl standing in it in front of her for the past week or so. The girl had these pale eyes that cried loneliness, and she had gorgeous lavender hair. It was the expression on her face that truly alarmed the third espada, even though her big coat must have been concealing some sort of scar. She wept, but not with actual tears. Blood. This girl had a smile on her face while she sobbed bloody tears from those pale eyes. It was almost as if she accepted the pain. Whatever was causing her pain, it's okay. It's acceptable to accept the suffering and maintain a smile in either case. This girl was unlike anything Tia had ever seen, and it was frightening her. The fourth espada, Ulquiorra Cipher, was surprisingly another that wasn't really paying attention. Although she wasn't exactly what you would call a drifter, she had been experiencing flashes of an unknown person for some time. In front of her, next to a sakura tree, is a girl with long, pink hair and green eyes. The girl was grinning and was dressed in a red shirt with short sleeves. Ulquiorra was unable to explain it, but she had the unmistakable impression that the girl's smile was artificial. Something, any kind of cover for her desperation. If Ulquiorra was skilled at anything, it was figuring out when someone was obviously trying to hide their desperation. It was unclear why the girl was attempting to do this, but Ulquiorra could definitely sense her suffering. It was almost as though they had some connection. The normally somber and stoic Arankar was becoming frozen and wanted to pull away from the girl, but something kept pulling her back in. The situation worsened when the girl continued to smile as the sakura tree caught fire. This meeting was not attended by the last espada, or at least the former espada. Rather, she was sitting on a sand dune in the Hueco Mundo desert alongside her brothers, Dondosheka and Pesci. For whatever reason, she knew she was not a child even though her body belonged to one. Or so she thought. Sometimes these mental flashes prevented her from falling asleep. Glimpses of a long-haired, dark-eyed teenage girl with brown eyes. The girl known as Nell was sitting on the sand dune right now, staring up at the sky while her brothers slept, wondering what that teenager meant to her. Who was this person, and why had she been experiencing these flashes for a little over a week? Nell was drawn to that teen for unknown reasons, even though she knew her brothers wouldn't have a clear answer for her. Something that felt right, something she knew completely. What was it? What could it be, exactly? Why was the girl standing in the middle of a terrible snowstorm, and who was she? Aizen dismissed them all after the meeting and watched them go. Even though the invasion day was drawing near, he could sense that some of his espada were beginning to doubt the entire plan. Aizen thought this was unfortunate. It had surprised him that some of them had developed human emotions so quickly. They were to be disposable as a result. In particular his first, third, and, somewhat surprisingly, fourth espada. Recently, they had been acting strangely. Sometimes completely out of it, sometimes unresponsive. It was as if their thoughts were elsewhere, which Aizen found quite offensive. Stark. After the meeting, Stark still couldn't shake the memory of the blonde child he kept seeing as he made his way back to his chambers. The headache was really starting to get on his head, and Lilynet's screaming didn't make it better. Though the small child was his other half, and a very talkative, red-headed one at that. Man, Stark, did she ever get annoying at times? Stark. Do you even think I'm speaking? As they made their way to his room down the hall, she screamed at him. Kinda hard not to hear you, Lilynet, but that doesn't mean I'm listening. He responded to her by kicking himself in the butt. What the hell? When he began chasing her, Lilynet laughed at him and began to flee. That was for ignoring me, you jerk. She ran through the corridors to get away from him, calling out to him. When Lilynet turned a corner to flee from Stark, she ran into a certain blue-haired Fraccione who wasn't too happy about it. Hey. With a look of obvious anger in her eyes and voice, the new girl yelled as she easily lifted Lilynet up by the hair. Kid, you just made a huge-ass mistake. Put me down, you weird-eyed deer. Lilynet tried her hardest to free herself from the girl's hold, but she was unable to do so in any way. Apache, what are you doing? With a sneer in her voice, another girl with olive-colored hair asked the now named Apache, covering her mouth with her sleeve. About to chastise this brat for coming across me. I am that. Apache felt a hand on her head before she could really finish. She came to a complete stop upon seeing the Primera Espada and turned to see who had done such a thing to her, wanting to yell at them. Stark shot her a cold stare before picking her up off the ground and making almost no effort to meet her eyes. Apache was incredibly nervous because this man could kill her with a single thought, if that was his desire. I'd appreciate it if you dropped Lilynet, please. He spoke to her in a tone of calmness that betrayed boredom. Apache tightened her jaw as Sun and Mila Rose assumed their positions. They might not be a unit in and of themselves, but if they could stop someone from attacking the other, they would. Stark simply gave them a cold, indifferent stare and found it amusing that the three believed they could defeat him. He laughed at the thought, but stopped himself when he noticed another person approaching them all. That's enough, girls. Between her outburst and the Primera, the cool, collected voice of Tia Harabel broke the tension. You girls wouldn't even attempt to injure him, much less lay a scratch on him. Return to our rooms now, and get ready for the invasion. Yes, Master Harabel. They lowered their guards and departed, to which the Tres Bestia replied. With a final sneer, Apache turned to face the now smiling Lilynet. When Tia saw this, she gave the girl a glare of her own, making her duck behind Stark. You should mind what you do and who you do it to, girl. You don't have to worry about her, Tia. Stark addressed her, grabbing her interest. For the first time, Tia looked directly at the Espada, her harsh gaze shifting from the still shook Fracione. At that moment, the two Espadas bent down and gazed longingly into each other's eyes. They looked into each other's eyes and felt a familiarity that made time seem to stop. There was something sentimental about them. Something that put a sense of warmth where their hearts ought to be. Stark sensed the boy with the blonde hair in his flashes and dreams, and this time, he saw the boy grinning at him. Next, glimpses of the boy's life unfolded before the Espada. The suffering inflicted upon him by other people. The mistreatment he endured every day. Stark detested every minute of it even though he had no idea what he was seeing. That accounted for the boy's forced smile during those visions. He was making a valiant effort to gain acceptance and recognition from these people. The last flash showed the boy dying at the hands of a man in a mask whose silver hair defied gravity. The boy had a betrayed and shocked expression on his face after what that man had done to him. Stark wanted that man dead for some reason, though he wasn't sure why. Even worse than death, he desired for him to endure agony and plead for forgiveness, only to have it taken from him in the most heinous manners. The sight of those people caused his blue spirit energy to begin to leak out of him. Inadvertently, this also revealed a red energy inside of it. Lilynet smiled at this. Tia noticed that she was no longer in pain when the girl with the pupil less eyes appeared in her mind. Tia could see these pictures of the girl's life unfolding in front of her as the water had taken away the blood from her eyes. The girl was abused by people who bore a striking resemblance to her. Everything about them was the same, including the eyes and facial features. All Tia could think was that these folks were linked to the previous girl in some way. Her suspicion was confirmed when she witnessed the group of them inflicting almost excruciating pain on the girl. The girl was crying bloody tears because she was in pain, but the worst was still to come because a man was talking down to her, giving the girl the last blow that terminated her life and calling her a failure of a daughter. Tia became furious at these people after realizing this. She wanted to rip them all to pieces and watch as their own tainted blood drowned them all. Her body began to release her yellow spirit energy, which had a subtle purple tint to it. Ulquiorra. In order to retrieve the healer girl and return her to Los Noches, the fourth Espada was getting ready for her own mission. Easy, huh? That is, if said Espada hadn't been fixated on the girl with the pink hair from her mind. This is why, instead of opening the Dongai as she was supposed to, she inadvertently opened a Garganta in the Hueco Mundo Sands. Ulquiorra sighed in irritation as she got ready to open another Garganta and head to her precise location, only to be stopped by the sight of someone else standing behind her. She turned, expecting to see some sort of battle, but instead she saw a child, her hair aquamarine, her mask cracked on her head. Ulquiorra gazed at the girl, showing no interest in her at all, until she met her eyes and saw the image of that girl with the pink hair once more. She was shocked by this and didn't know what it meant. Why? Why was this girl tormenting her? Why, before Aizen? Sama's grand scheme, was she even on her mind at all? She had to keep her life's purpose front and center. She became enraged by the idea that her goal was to please her leader and make sure she followed his instructions. She was infuriated at the idea of following someone with more power and a superiority complex, even though she wasn't sure why. All of a sudden, she began to see images in her head of another pink-haired woman who was making the pink-haired girl do things she didn't want to. The images played out, and Ulquiorra felt her anguish and hopelessness. The woman rejected the girl's attempts to win her love and acceptance, making her continue to perform tasks she didn't want to. The girl was verbally abused by the person Ulquiorra could only surmise was her mother, and after that, the espada encountered something completely incomprehensible. The girl was being carried over to the woman, but she was now a corpse. Her neck broke as if it were nothing at all, and the woman didn't even seem to care. Ulquiorra became furious at this, clenching her teeth and letting out a torrent of spirit energy at the woman's indifference to her own daughter's death. There was a faint hint of pink in the black-teal spirit energy. Nell was experiencing a similar flash of visions as Ulquiorra was taking in all of this information. Once again, the girl with dark hair was there in the snowstorm, but this time, death, ice, and fire surrounded her. Nell observed the girl contentedly surrounded by what she could only assume to be her parents. Everything was ideal until the girl revealed to her mother one day that she had the ability to turn water into ice. At that point, the girl killed her father and the father killed the mother. Others were chasing after her, yelling for her blood to flow through the streets covered in snow. Everything changed for her when she encountered a man who had bandages covering his face. Her goal in life was to be this man's tool. She also wanted to protect her loved ones, but meeting a boy with blonde hair made her realize that she was much more than just a tool. Nell noticed the girl was excited about meeting the blonde, but her happiness was short. Lived as she witnessed the blonde, herself, and the man she had turned into a tool for being killed by another masked man. The little former espada was so furious about this that Ulquiorra's spirit energy swirled around hers. Her own pink spirit energy was tinged with icy blue. Unknown location. It is time, my brothers. The first figure spoke to Yami and Shinigami. Yes, brother, yes, brother. Both of them spoke to their brother as they all felt the energies from the other world. For years now, all three brothers had watched as the world of humans had fallen far from grace and was consumed by a lust for power and control by any means necessary. It was sickening to them all the same. Whether it was the Shinigami or Yami himself, they wanted to go down there and show the humans of the world that their drive to steal power in order to subjugate others has only one possible outcome: death. But their brother, the one with the true final say, told them of why they can't do that. He convinced them that these four will bring about order and true peace to the world, even if they had to make the world lose half of its population to do so. Be ready, my brothers. The first figure started as he made his way towards a large door that was sealed shut. The door was taller than the three and was made out of a black, cast iron metal that had the kanji for seal etched into the center of it. The kanji started to fill up with the energies of the four, and the first figure spoke of each color filing in. Red. The top part of the kanji was red. The boy of wolves and foxes. Living his life, aware of the lie and not doing anything about it. Next was purple, coming off of the red into the halfway point of the kanji. Purple. The girl of the sea and lions. Desperately trying to change a clan that is too far gone to change. After that was pink, reaching down from the purple. Pink. The girl of despair and strength. Trying to live for the love she will never receive. Last was the icy blue, filling out the kanji's last parts. And finally, blue. The girl seeking a purpose for her own existence. The kanji started to glow and shine among the door, causing it to crack open. The kanji symbol disappeared and the four colors stretched to the four corners of the door. Red at the top left. Purple at the top right. Pink at the bottom left. And blue at the bottom right. The cast iron door opened up slowly and both Yami and Shinigami stood next to their brother in awe of his creations. They both looked at him before looking back to what was behind the door and marveled at them. These. The first figure spoke in a tone that held authority yet fairness in it. Will help them change the way the world is. Forever. Unknown location. Finally, the figure spoke as the room that was sealed away glowed heavily with the 4 colors of our heroes. The Shinigami and Yami stood by their brother and watched as the objects within the room began to glow their respective colors. Within this room, 4 weapons were constructed and forged by the very heavens and hell itself. These weapons were made specifically for our heroes as they would need them to change their world for the better. The first to glow and change were a pair of dual katanas forged from the very fires of hell. They glowed an intense red color. One of the blades was a pure red color while the other had a blue shine to it. They both had black handles and a standard pommel that was white, but the unique thing about the both of them was what was written on the blades themselves. On the red one, there was a pure black kanji for fox on it, and the blue one had a pure red kanji for wolf. Both blades were laid next to each other as the red glow intensified. The next one was a single-sided broadsword glowing a purple hue, and forged using the lightest materials in all of heaven. It was around only 3.5 feet, handle included. The sharp edge of the blade had a fine and light purple finish to it while the blunt end, despite having a jagged razor-sharp edges to it, was a clear metal that looked like it was flowing, like water. The handle was attached to itself, giving it a rapier look to it. There were markings written on the handle that read, "Family," and "Truth," on it, and there was a blue kanji on both sides of the blade. On for shark, and the other for lion. The purple glow was intensifying. The third weapon was a spear with a blue glow to it, and it was forged using the coldest materials found in Hell's lowest circle. The spear stood at around 6 feet, with a pole that was entirely made of white metal and a blade composed entirely of ice. All around the pole were what seemed like blue seals. The seals swirled around the pole from the very top of near the blade to the very bottom. The blade had dark blue kanji on each end of it. One for ice and the other for centaur. The blue glow was growing. Lastly were a pair of gloves with a pink glow to it, and these were forged from the very heart of a dying archangel. The gloves were completely black with teal metal plates on the flat ends of them. The palm ends had pink kanjis on them. The one for the right hand had the kanji for despair, while the one for the left hand had the kanji for strength on it. The pink glow was getting more and more intense by the second. "It is time." The figure spoke out as he and his brothers felt the coming presence of the 4 on their way here as we speak. In front of the 3 brothers, 4 souls started to form out of nothing and fell onto the ground one by one. The first a woman with blonde hair, followed by the only man of the group, then a pale woman and finally an aquamarine-haired girl. They were all laying on the ground and all naked as the day they were born, formed. Now then. The figure started as he looked towards his brothers. "Shinigami, Yami, you both know what to do." "Yes brother, yes brother." They both say as they leave the room in opposite directions. Hours later. As time ticks away, Stark could feel himself stirring from his sleep. He slowly opened his eyes and regretted it almost immediately as he was hit with bright lights coming from the ceiling. Stark put his arm out in front of his face to block the light and groaned. "Lilynet, turn off the damn light would ya?" That was when he heard 2 things that caused him to grow alert. The first was that his voice had gotten a little higher pitched. The second was a voice he didn't recognize at all. "I am not Lilynet, child," the voice said in a calm and soothing tone. It caused Stark to quickly rise up and look around for that voice. He looked around and noticed that he was in a bedroom of some kind. The room was a pretty standard-sized room for a single person. It had a dark brown dresser next to the opposite side of the wall. The dresser had a set of white clothes laying on top of it and had a pair of dual swords in black sheaths leaning next to the side of it. Above the dresser is a mirror and Stark saw himself in it, only he looked vastly different. He was a little shorter than usual, probably by several inches to a foot now that he thought about it. His usual brown hair was now blonde with a few patches of brown in them. His usual blue gray eyes were now a more vibrant sapphire color with a faint red shade in the center of the iris. And he had faint whisker marks on his cheeks. He also noticed that he wasn't wearing any of his clothes, and saw his muscular and lean body was still the same as always. "What the hell?" Stark said to himself as he approached the mirror with a slight hesitation. He reached out with a nervous hand and tapped the glass, shocked that it is real. "What the hell happened to me?" he said as he got closer to the mirror, carefully analyzing himself to ensure this wasn't one of Zale's deranged experiments on him. "I assure you, this is no trick, my child." That same, soothing voice spoke from behind Stark, causing him to turn around fast, ready for an attack. Instead, he saw what looked like a man sitting on the all-white bed. The man had pure white skin that was covered in a pale gray kimono. His hair was a beautiful and vibrant blue color with what seemed like some substance moving freely within it, despite him not moving an inch. The hair was long and tied up in a ponytail that stopped at his lower back. His pale white eyes held compassion and his smile held kindness that Stark had never seen before, or will ever see again. The kimono had white flowers all around the bottom hem and a blue sash tied comfortably around his waist. He also had some sort of patch on the left shoulder of his kimono that had a kanji on it. The kanji said, "All-Seeing," on it in a golden lettering. "W. Who are you?" Stark shakily asked this man. The man kept his smile and stood up. "I have many names, my child. The All-Father. Elohim. Jehovah. Yahweh. El. Olam. The One above all, and many more, child." The man was standing in front of Stark and the espada realized that this man of many names was an easy 7 foot tall. "But you may call me by my real name. Cammy." Stark went wide-eyed at hearing this news. He was speaking to Cammy himself and didn't even realize it. Stark may have been disrespectful to Aizen, but that was only because that man was just that, a man. This was Cammy. One you show respect to no matter what. Stark bowed his head to the deity in front of him, hoping that he did not anger him with his bluntness, only to feel a warm hand on top of his head, ruffling his hair. "You do not need to bow before me, child." Cammy started while lifting Stark's head up by his chin. "I do not want you to. All I want from you is your compassion and your heart." "My compassion and my heart?" Stark asked, confused at what Cammy was asking him. "Tell me something, child." Cammy started again. "Those visions that you have been receiving for some time now, do you remember them?" "Yes." Stark answered truthfully. "But what does it mean, and why do I look like that boy now?" Cammy continued to smile at him and answered. "Because long ago, before you became the Primera Espada and even before you met Aizen, there was a boy with a heart of gold and the will of many strong men. This boy, despite all of the hatred and malice he received from others, he still wore a smile on his face and tried to gain their approval by any means." Cammy stopped and frowned at the next bit of information he was going to say. His life was ended by the one who should have protected and trained him properly, but that did not happen. Instead, he was betrayed by that very same man and his pure soul was brought to me and my brothers. Stark listened intently and was starting to put some of the pieces together, but was still confused on one thing. "Lord Cammy. I don't understand what this has to do with me being here." Cammy looked to him with a kind and warm smile. "Because my child, that boy was you." Stark was shocked by that answer. He backed away a few steps and stood there with his hand atop of his blonde hair. He was that boy he had seen in those visions. But why couldn't he remember anything about himself? Past self? "I understand if you are having a hard time accepting this, child, but I assure you that you were once the boy in your visions." Cammy spoke to him, sensing the distress and confusion within Stark. "Your name back then was Naruto Uzumaki. Namikaze, son of the 4th Hokage and Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, or as you knew her from your current life." Cammy motioned to the door and Stark looked at it. The door opened and in walked Lilynette in the same attire she's always worn. Stark, Naruto looked relieved seeing his partner unharmed and still with that same annoying grin as always. "Hey there, Stark." She started as she crossed her arms and then looked past him. "So Cammy, is it finally safe now?" "Yes." He answered her with a gentle smile gracing his features. "Though, you will be retaining a few features of your current body along with your past self. I hope that will be fine for you, Kurama." Lilynette, Kurama nodded and then looked right back to the eyes of her partner. "It's finally time, Kit." Before Stark could even say anything or ask what she meant, she started to glow a red hue all around herself. Stark, Naruto stood there, mouth agape as he saw her transform within this red energy. She grew taller, about up to his chin, Her hair grew out past her shoulders and to her mid-back. She started to become developed in all the right places, but the strangest thing that happened to her was that she had 9 tails coming out of her lower back. Once the red energy disappeared, Stark Naruto saw that she had changed completely. Her hollow helmet were gone, showing her round face and deep amber right eye. Her hair was a deep crimson while her tails were a dark orange color with black tips. About the only thing that looked the same as when she was just a few seconds ago was her facial features, her lack of a left eye, and the hollow hole above her stomach. Only the hole had that same red energy going through it. Lilynet? Stark Naruto asked her as he noticed something that caused him to look away with a blush. You know you're naked, right? Lilynet Kurama noticed that she was indeed naked and didn't really give a normal reaction per se. Hey. She chuckled out as she struck a sexy pose, causing Stark Naruto to blush a bit and turn away. Do you think I really care, Kit? I'm a demon kitsune, and the queen no less. So if anybody has a problem with me being nude like this, well then I suggest they step up and do something about it. Stark Naruto shook his head at his companion's still, go-with-the-flow attitude. Kami chuckled a bit at this as he saw how the former espada was reacting to this all. After a few minutes, both Stark Naruto and Lilynet Kurama got dressed in outfits similar to their original attire, well mainly just the color scheme. Stark Naruto wore baggy white pants with both swords attached to his left side while also wearing a long-sleeve black shirt that had a whited-out number 1 on the chest where his original number was. He also had black sandals on. Lilynet Kurama wore a less revealing outfit unlike her previous lowly body. She wore a pair of tight black pants with white strips running along the sides of them, and she also had on a tight white shirt with a small opening on her chest to show some of her impressive cleavage. Alright then. Kami started as he stood up from the bed and made his way towards the door. Let's go and see how your friends are doing. All 3 of them left the room and were walking down several hallways. To Stark Naruto, this felt as if he was walking through Los Noches once again. The many corridors and long hallways were actually kind of a refreshing thing for him. As they walked along, he felt as if this whole thing with him being some kid named Naruto back then and a ninja just seemed so random. It would explain a few things, like why he was so powerful or why Lilynet has always been there by his side, but it doesn't explain why he was just now starting to get those visions. He didn't know how to react to this all, but one thing was for certain, if Kami brought him here and told him what's what, then who was he to question? After a few minutes of walking, the 3 were now in a large room where 3 other individuals were sitting around. Stark Naruto went a little wide-eyed when seeing these 3 individuals, as they all looked like people he had never seen before, yet their energy was all too clear to him. The first of them was a girl with long, lavender hair with a faint yellow at the tips of it. Her eyes were pale with a hint of green at the center of them. Her face looked completely different along with her skin as she looked like a teenage girl now. She was wearing tight, black pants with white sandals and a high-collar lavender jacket over a black, fishnet shirt that covered her large breast. She also had a broadsword hanging off her back. She was leaned up against a wall with her eyes closed. The next was another familiar girl. She had shoulder-length pink hair with a small patch of black on the left side, right above her eye. She wore a black shorts and knee-high combat sandals along with a sleeveless white shirt that hugged her body closely, but didn't constrict her breast too well. On her hands were pink gloves with kanji on the both of them. She may have had her eyes closed as she sat down on the floor, but Stark Naruto had a feeling that her eyes were a pure emerald green color of sorts. He didn't know why he thought that, but he just did for some reason. The last girl was definitely the most energetic of the 3. She had waist-long black hair with an aquamarine shade along her roots and the tips. Her brown eyes looked all around the place in a fascinated motion, and she also had this red streak across her face. She was wearing white shorts, black sandals, a long-sleeved black shirt under a tied-up blue coat that didn't do much to hide her impressive bust. She also had a spear in hand and was twirling it around while looking around the room. Stark Naruto recognized their energy almost immediately. Halibal, Ulquiorra, Nalil. As he said their names, they turned to him and noticed his energy right then and there. They looked at his body and took notice of how different he looks just like they did and then noticed Kami and Lilynet Kurama standing next to him. Before they could say anything though, Kami spoke up. Now that all of you are here, I can start by telling you all why you're here. Kami started. You four have been resurrected for the sole purpose of bringing peace and order to your former world. What do you mean, former world? Haku and Hinata asked in an annoyed tone. Cammy smiled to her. Simple. The four of you were wronged in your previous lives in this world. As a result, you were all resurrected as these espadas in another world. He stopped to let this information sink in for a moment, taking in the looks of shock and surprise in their eyes before continuing. This world has been changed by greed, corruption, evil and other heinous acts by men who are desperate for power. I have saved you four because of how pure your souls were at the time and how you all died in wrong ways. Died in wrong ways? Ulquiorra, Sakura spoke up in her usual stoic tone, only a little bit more higher pitched than before. What do you mean wrong ways? Simple. Cammy looked to both Nalil, Haku and Naruto. You two were killed after the battle in Wave was over and done with. By the man that took away your master. He pointed to Nalil, Haku. And betrayed you as a teacher. He pointed to Naruto. Both started to have a flash of memories go through their minds in such a rush. Memories of a bridge and battling each other inside some sort of dome ice mirrors. They also started getting flashes of their past lives' memories. From Naruto's abusive life in a village that hates him for something he isn't, to Haku's father killing her mother and her killing him. Their memories came back in full force while their current memories remained unchanged. Cammy looked to Ulquiorra, Sakura next. You were killed by the same teacher as him simply for being concerned for his well-being and questioning why your sensei killed him in general. Ulquiorra, Sakura's eyes went wide as she started to receive the memories of the day she died. How scared and terrified she was when he former asshole of a teacher snapped her neck like a twig just for showing her anger at him for killing her teammate. The rest of Sakura's memories played in her mind. The abuse her mother put her through both physical and mental, that prick Uchiha that was so arrogant in his humiliating ways of rejecting her unwilling advances. The memories made her narrow her eyes and grit her teeth at how much she suffered because of it. Last, but now least, Cammy looked to Haku and Hinata, seeing the nervous anticipation in her eyes. And you, child, were killed by your very own family simply for loving someone who they all saw as a demon. Cammy looked over to Naruto as he said that last part. Haku and Hinata looked to Naruto and the flood of memories of her crush on him came in full force. She blushed at those memories she had of him and now had the confidence to confess to him. Though those good memories were replaced with the ones of her family, beating her within an inch of her life before finally ending her. She gritted her teeth as she started to remember that day rather vividly now. How her so-called family called her weak and a waste of space. Now that those memories are back, you all will have to change the world by ridding it of its corruption and evil. Cammy started while seeing the resolve in their eyes. The weapons you all have will help in cleansing the world of its impurity and greed. They are infused with both your Zanpakutos and your chakra, making them your ultimate weapons. Now then. Cammy snapped his fingers and a door on the far side of the room opened up. The four saw this and saw that it led to a forest of some kind. Good luck, my children, I expect that you will need it. The four nodded then bowed to Cammy before looking to each other. They all nodded, then, without a moment's hesitation, they all sonitoed out of this realm and back to their old home, ready to rid it of all its evil. Forest, daytime. In a forest not too far away from a small village, there was a man traveling on foot with a bag over his shoulder. The man was average height, with brown hair and light skin. He was wearing pale blue shorts and a white shirt under a black coat and plain sandals, and was heading towards a village that was only a mile or two down the path. The man stopped after a few minutes and leaned on one of the various trees along the road. Oh man. The man said to himself as he got under a shady spot. He pulled a canteen of water out of his bag. Just had to travel at this time of the season. It is too hot out here. Before he could take a swig of the cold beverage, a kunai struck the canteen, knocking it out of his hands. The man was shocked at what he had just happened and looked around out of fear. He knew that bandits would be a problem in these parts, but never in his dreams did he think he would run into ninjas. The thought of it all was just terrifying to him. From what he has heard, there are some ninjas that were not the friendliest of people. Some of the worst were from Kumogakure, Iwagakure and Otogakure, but since the man was headed to Takigakure, Iwa wasn't too much of a stretch right now. Sure enough, a group of 7 Iwa ninjas wearing the standard Junin outfits leapt out of the forest and circled around the man. The man started to sweat as he found himself surrounded by the ninja. Over the years, Iwa had become quite unstable of a place to live in or even higher. They had never really gotten over their defeat at the hands of Konoha in the last war. More specifically, the Yellow Flash is who they hated the most. Iwa has become a shell of what it used to be, as they have ninja that go out of their way to harass smaller village into submission, kidnapping children as ransom for their weak economy, and even teaming up with Orochimaru to eventually destroy Konoha and take its power from them. They were even in talks with Kumo and AIM. Back to the seven surrounding the man. One of the ninja, the leader from the looks of him, stepped forward and smiled to the man in a sinister fashion. "Well, what do we have over here?" He started as he circled the man as he clutched his belongings tightly. A lone traveler walking by himself in the forest. "Hey. Do you know whose territory this is?" The man shook his head vigorously, fearing that this might be the end of his life. "These parts belong to Iwa." The leader continued with an confident smirk. "And very soon, Taki will bend to our rule, but for you I'll make a deal with." The man looked to the leader and swallowed the lump in his throat. What kind of deal?" he stuttered out. "If you give us what's in the bag, we might just let you live." The leader spoke up, enticing a chuckle from the other six when he said, "Might just let you live." The man looked around, wondering if he can just make a break for it, but that thought went out the window when the leader held a sword right at his throat. "I wouldn't try running messenger," the leader said with a scowl, getting a confused yet terrified look from the man. Messenger?" The man spoke up in a panicked tone. "I'm not a messenger, I swear." "Too bad." The leader spoke up as one of the other ninja grabbed the man from behind and another ripped his bag from his grasp. The man struggled as hard as he could, but was powerless in the ninja's death grip. The one that had his bag started to dump its contents onto the ground, and what came out were masks. They were plain white masks with no distinguishable marks to them. The Iwa ninjas looked to them and laughed, thinking that this was a messenger from Takikakir's allies, but instead really was just some traveler. "Well, it seems you were indeed telling the truth." The leader started. "I guess we can just let you go." The man sighed in relief, thinking that he was safe, at least until the sword in the leader's hand was back at his throat. But that would have made our entire time here a waste, and we all wouldn't want that. The man was at his wit's end. He thought that he would be safe after they found out that he wasn't a messenger or spy from Taki's allies, but now, this was the end for him. He closed his eyes as the Iwa Junin drew his arm back and was preparing to thrust it forward. The man waited for the end to come, but all he heard was what sounded like steel hitting steel. He opened his eyes and saw the impossible. A girl with pink hair, no older than 13 or 14 by the looks of her, stood in between the leader and the man. What was the impossible part was the fact that she had her hand out and the tip of the blade was in her slender fingers. The Iwa Nin looked on in shock as this girl just appeared out of thin air and stopped their leader's blade with her hand with the greatest of ease. "Who the hell do you think you are?" the leader shouted out in anger through gritted teeth. The girl just stood there with her eyes closed and head down. She wasn't paying the leader any attention whatsoever. Before the leader could shout at her again, she turned to the man and opened her eyes to him. "Are you all right?" she asked in a stoic voice that almost sounded void of emotions. The man simply nodded to her as he saw that the leader was getting angrier at this girl. "I don't know who you are, or where you came from, but this is Iwa business." The leader started with a hard glare aimed at the girl. "If you value your miserable excuse of a life, then I suggest you leave before me and my men use you like a toy." The Iwa Nin started to chuckle pervertedly. The girl didn't react to them and instead continued to look towards the man. This angered the ninjas as they were getting ready to attack her if she didn't move. Before they could though, a spear came crashing through the forest and spiked itself right into one of Nin's backs, impaling him to the ground. The rest of the Iwa Nin froze for a moment before readying themselves for an attack. They brought out their kunai and tantos and readied themselves for an attack. The Nin holding the man let him go to also get himself prepared. Unfortunately for him, this time another girl with lavender hair with faint yellow tips appeared in front of him out of nowhere. That Nin went wide-eyed for a moment before the girl decapitated him with a broadsword. That was already 2 Nin down in the span of a few seconds. You bitches." The leader yelled out in rage as he finally was able to get his sword out of the pink-haired one's grasp. He went through hand seals at a quick fashion and yelled out, "Earth style, Great Earth Spike." He formed many spikes out of the earth around him and fired them at the two girls. Both girls stood there, unfazed by the jutsu. The rest of the nin and even the man thought they were crazy for standing there, but that soon changed to shock when a boy a little taller than them appeared out of thin air and stood in front of them. He drew a sword in his right hand and, with the greatest of ease, deflected each and every single spike like it was nothing. "What?" the leader shouted out. Before he could say anything else though, he heard his men getting slaughtered. He looked over to them and saw that they were all being impaled by yet another girl with long black hair that had a bit of aquamarine in it. She was holding the spear that was used to impale the first ninja and had made quick work of the rest. The leader stood in disbelief as his entire squad had been obliterated without much effort by these four strangers. "Who in hell are you people?" he yelled through gritted teeth. He had a feeling that he should make a hasty retreat and inform the Tsuchikage of these new ninja. "Ulquiorra." The boy spoke towards the pink-haired girl. "You deal with him." She nodded and held out her right arm, pointing her finger towards him. The leader smirked, thinking that this girl was weak and pathetic. Yep, this guy was in for a surprise of a lifetime. "Huh?" he started. "You think pointing at me is gonna do anything, girl? When I inform the Tsuchikage of this, you four will surely be hunted down and killed for this. And after that, we'll find and kill your families." The girls all narrowed their eyes at that. "And then we'll burn your homes down." Right as he was about to make an escape, he saw the girl's fingers start to glow with this teal energy. He went wide-eyed as he could feel the killer intent coming off of them in this attack. Desperate, he went through hand seals again but was much too slow. A large beam of teal energy fired at him and hit him directly. The beam died down before it could reach the next village, but that didn't mean that many ninja on this day felt a new, and dark energy had just made itself known to the elemental country. The boy started. "Guess that's that." They all looked to the man and saw that he was shaking violently from that attack. "It's okay." The girl with the spear spoke first with a kind smile on her face that did calm the man to an extent. "We're not going to hurt you." She held out her hand to the man and he reluctantly took it. Once he stood up, he got a really good look at them all. "Who are you for?" he asked them in wonder of the people who teens that saved his life. "I'm Naruto." The boy now named Naruto spoke up. "This is Sakura, Haku and Hinata." The girls all nod in response to their names being called out, but the man just had one question. "I thought you called her Ulquiorra?" Sakura closed her eyes at this. "I go by either name. Just as the rest have another name of theirs they go by as well." "Well, whatever the reason for different names, thank you for saving me." The man spoke with a smile. "My name is Kanamura Hoshu, but you can just call me Khan." "Well, Khan." Hinata started. "Do you know a place where we could stay for the night?" "Well, I was headed for Takigakure in that direction to meet some friends and family." Khan started as he pointed past them. "You're all welcome to come if you like." The four nodded and before Khan could take a step, Haku grabbed him by the shoulder and suddenly they were only a few dozen meters away from the gates of Taki. Khan looked around in shock and surprise before also noticing that Naruto had his bag and his masks were all in there. Naruto handed Khan his bag back and they all proceeded into Taki. There, the four saw that the village was filled with good people, but for some reason, something just felt off about this whole place. Something trying to remain hidden from outside eyes. That was when Naruto felt something, or more like heard something. Suddenly and without any warning, Kurama appeared from behind him without anyone from the village noticing her. Her tails weren't there and she wore the same outfit as before. "Where were you?" Naruto asked her while keeping in stride with the others. "And what was that feeling I had earlier?" Kurama chuckled a bit before answering. "I went back into your mindscape right when we left the portal." She answered while putting her hands behind her head as they walked. As for that feeling, she got serious right then and there. "There's another jinchuriki here, and from what I can tell, it's my brother, Shomei. The Seven Tails Nanabi." Naruto narrowed his eyes as he listened to Kurama. From what he was able to gather, There were 9 total Biju, so that meant along with him there were 8 other jinchuriki. Kami must have dropped them off near the closest one for a reason. Before he could continue his thought, Khan stopped them all and directed their attention to a small ramen stand. I know it's not much, but as a show of my thanks, I'd like to treat you 4 to some ramen. Naruto suddenly remembered how much he loved the stuff in his old life and had a smile on his face. Hinata noticed the smile and giggled under her breath at her crush's old habit. Haku noticed her and turned to see Naruto with hard eyes looking right at the ramen. She laughed while Sakura just grinned and shook her head a bit. Kurama also laughed at him for his ramen addiction. Khan didn't know what was so funny, but he just had a very sinking feeling that he was gonna lose a lot of money for this. Konoha. Right now in Konoha, Hiruzen was already getting reports that Iwa was getting bolder in their escapades. From what the old man could tell, things were gonna get worse before they got better. Ever since the death of his surrogate grandson Naruto Uzumaki, his teammate Sakura Haruno, and even the now former Hyuga heiress Hinata Hyuga, Konoha has been on the receiving end of several attacks. Most of the time it's just from smaller villages who wanted to prove themselves stronger than a main village. They were dealt with Konoha only suffering a few injuries and rarely any deaths. That wasn't the problem right now though. Right now, he was receiving reports of Iwa subjugating smaller villages in their country to build up their army. What makes this even worse is the fact that Orochimaru has resurfaced again and teamed up with Iwa, allegedly according to the council. That was another problem Hiruzen was facing. The council. Ever since Naruto died on the Wave mission almost 3 years ago, they had tried to stretch their reach of power from simply the civilian side of the village to the shinobi side. Especially with Sasuke. That little bastard had gotten even more arrogant in these past couple years. When he heard about his teammates dying, he laughed it off and claimed that they were weak despite the fact that he was the only member of Team 7 at the time that was unconscious. He and Kakashi had forgotten about the 2 and Team 7 was supposed to be disbanded, but thanks to the civilian council and their unfortunate pull, along with Danzo, secretly of course, they just added 2 new members and had the team resume training and missions. The 2 new members being 2 of Danzo's root ninja, Sai and some other girl. Hiruzen and most of the shinobi side of the council tried to revoke this, but were outvoted by both the civilians, the elders, and to no surprise Hiyashi. The death of his eldest daughter had done very little to curb his superiority complex along with his clan. But back to important matters, when word from Jiraiya got to Hiruzen that Orochimaru had teamed up with Iwa, the old Kage knew he would need the help of every shinobi. Including Tsunade. Hiruzen ordered Jiraiya to find and bring her back to Konoha by any means necessary. After a few months, she along with Shizune returned, but only because of what she was told about Naruto. Seeing as though she was related to him from her grandmother's side of the family, she felt that she had to continue the legacy of the Uzumaki, seeing as though she was seemingly the only one left now. The death of Naruto, Sakura and Hinata had a mixed bag of an effect on the remaining Konoha 12. Some, like Sasuke, Neji and Kiba, didn't think much on the 3 and considered them weak. Though Kiba was a little bit heartbroken that he couldn't get his rocks off with Hinata at all. Others, like Ino, Shikamaru, Shoji and Shino, were torn up about their friends' deaths. They vowed to become stronger for them. The last few though, Lee and Ten, didn't really know the 3, so their deaths really didn't concern them. Hiruzen put down one of the reports of Iwa Nin attacking one of the trade routes for Konoha. This was about to get much worse, he could tell. This hit run tactic that Iwa was doing would catch up and soon enough turn into something worse. Hiruzen put his hand to his forehead and pressed his finger and thumb on the bridge of his nose. These are truly trying times for Konoha now, he said to himself. Sensei. The familiar voice of Jiraiya came from the window. Hiruzen shot up his head for a moment when he saw his former student and hoped that nothing was too wrong now. What is it, Jiraiya? Is it something else involving Iwa? Jiraiya stopped for a moment once Tsunade opened the door and entered the room. In a sense, Sensei. She spoke to him. My spy network has just found out that Iwa is targeting Takigakure as we speak. Jiraiya started. From what they could tell, it seems that Iwa is trying to also subjugate the village and increase their own power for when they attack us for real. Hiruzen sighed at this, but then something didn't make any sense to him right now. Tsunade. He started as he looked towards her. This is usually Jiraiya's expertise in his spy network. Yours is medical, so why exactly are you here for Jiraiya's intel? Tsunade didn't miss a step as she went over to his desk and pulled out a file from her coat. She dropped it onto the desk and folded her arms as Hiruzen looked at it. Because when you find 6¼ bodies of Iwajunin not far from Taki, all with various degrees of fatal kills, it becomes my medical business. The news caused Hiruzen to quickly look through the files and see the pictures of Iwa ninja in various degrees right now. One was decapitated, the other 4 had fatal stab wounds and cuts all throughout their bodies, one that seemed to have been impaled through the gut, and then the small bits and pieces of a 7th one were seen on the pictures. Hiruzen was shocked. There's no way that Taki had ninja this precise or this brutal with their methods. That's when something hit him. He put the file down and looked to 2 of his 3 students. That energy that we felt earlier. He started with wide eyes while Jiraiya and Tsunade took a breath. Was it near Taki? Sensei. Jiraiya started. Where those Iwa nin are is where that chakra originated from. Hiruzen sighed as he leaned back in his chair. Then that means that we have something else to worry about. He started to them while looking out to the village. I only hope that this isn't something that will be the end of our home. Returning to Takigakure. Having consumed nearly 20 bowls of ramen in total, most of them from Naruto, naturally, Khan was truly kicking himself for treating them to lunch. 12 bowls out of the 20 were given to Naruto, 8 to Hinata, and the remaining 2 to Sakura and Haku, respectively. The 4 were ready to leave the village after giving thanks to Khan for saving his life by treating them, but that's when Naruto smelled blood. Not just any blood, but a sister's blood. The Jinchuriki's blood. Naruto quickly disappeared from his group and Khan, only to reappear in an open area beyond Taki's walls. After landing on a tree, he looked down to see a girl who was no older than he was being beaten by 5 mature Chunin men. Her skin was tan, her hair mint green, and her clothes were tattered white with her blood all over them. She attempted to crawl away from the men, but one of them severely stepped on her spine, stopping her. Her body ached so much that she cried out in agony, tears beginning to run down her cheeks. One of the men knelt down to her, a sadistic smile on his face. Now listen, demon bitch. She continued to cry as he began to her. My guys and I are going to have a great time with you, so don't even consider calling for assistance. Besides, who wants a demon whore like you saved? The girl bowed her head, her eyes welling up with more and more tears. The man who had been speaking to her stepped back to her legs and violently tore off her pants, exposing her voluptuous curves to everyone. With her limited training, the girl attempted to fight her way out. She would have done anything to escape this predicament, these woods, and the village's stare for all time, but despite her best efforts, the men's powerful grip held her down. This is my life. The girl stopped fighting and gave up, thinking to herself. Controlled like a leash. Wearing dog, tortured, beaten, and raped. Even the 7 tails have stopped communicating with me. How did I earn this right? How did I act? All I want is for this to end. Feeling one of the man's boners rub against her bare ass, she closed her eyes. I just want to live in peace. Then you have to take it, by force if necessary. Another voice was heard. She felt something suddenly covering her. When the girl opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was one of her attackers' severed heads. She got to her feet quickly and turned to see the other Chunin lying in various states of death on the ground. She noticed that one of the Chunin's vests was covering her when she looked in the mirror. She saw someone she had never met before when she looked up. A red blade was being held by a slightly younger adolescent than her. After wiping the blood from it with one of the Chunin's vests, he sheathed his blade. The girl could only turn to face the teenager, blushing from the way he made her feel, and marvel at his strength. The boy turned to face her, giving the girl a close-up view of his face. Her redness became more intense. You okay there? Although he was aware of her blush, Naruto asked her anyway. Why? Yeah. She stammered out a response. Who are you? The name's Stark, but you can call me Naruto when it's just the 5 of us. Naruto responded to her. 5 of us? She began just in time to see 3 more figures suddenly materialize behind Naruto. The girl then reverted to her defensive stance as a result, but Naruto stopped her. It's all right. They're at my side. The girl relaxed as Naruto spoke. What's your name, by the way? Fu. She gave him her response. Interesting. As she approached Fu, Hinata raised her voice. This new girl just stood in front of the mint-haired girl and stared directly into her eyes. You're just like Naruto. Kun. What? Fu was feeling uneasy and bewildered right now. She means that you're a jinchuriki. After Hinata made her way aside, Naruto began. Just like me. Fu regarded this with wide eyes. She was exactly like someone else, only much stronger. Hearing that gave her a glimmer of hope because of how powerful Naruto appeared to be at the moment. She was about to speak when a voice she recognized but hadn't heard in a long time spoke to her. Kurama. My older sister is a part of that boy's soul. Chomei confronted her. Your child, this boy will help you. I already sense it. Chomei? Shocked, Fu spoke through their link. You're speaking to me again. Now that you have your hope back, yes. His container was addressed by the Seven Tails. Before Fu could say anything more to him, Haku cut him off. As nice as it would be to stay out here, I've been thinking about something that I believe would be a great benefit to us. She gave them a smile and went on. As this also affects Kon, we ought to return to him. Naruto turned to face Fu as the others nodded. He approached her after noticing something odd on the back of her neck, and the others left the same way they had arrived. He looked at her, making her blush, and she turned away, ashamed that he was staring at her neck. They marked you, didn't they? He inquired. It's a seal that makes it impossible for me to leave Taki or to even fight back against the ninja and civilians that attack me. Her eyes welled up as she replied. Then that'll be my first order of business when the four of us are done with whatever Haku has for us. She looked to Naruto when he spoke up. Stay hidden and wait by the gates. I'll take care of that seal for you when we're through. All right? Tears streamed down Fu's cheeks. When she nodded, Naruto grinned and then vanished from sight. He reappeared behind Kon with his allies. When he witnessed them vanish in that manner only to reappear again, and without attracting any notice, the man was shocked beyond belief. I'm not sure what you guys did, Kon said after gathering himself. But I guess this is where we part ways, I think. Haku turned him around with her hand on his shoulder before he could move. He was a little tense at the moment when he saw her smile. Were they going to harm him in some way? Did they just use him to get a free dinner and call it a day? Right up until he heard what she had to say, Kon was really anxious. Before you go, Kon-san, we have a proposition for you. Taki's gates, 2 hours later. Fu patiently awaited the arrival of Naruto and company. Though she wasn't sure what kind of person he was, she didn't anticipate that it would take them this long to return. Was he a decent man? Which three were cruel or kind? What did he mean, precisely, when he spoke of caring for the seal? Fu was placing a lot of trust in these four unknown individuals. Seated close to the gate, her mind drifted back to the few hours prior, when those men almost sexually assaulted her. How the seal rendered her powerless, and how she simply gave up. Fu's hope was restored not only by Naruto's actions to save her but also by his words to her when she whispered that all she wanted was peace. Then you have to accept it, even if it means using force. Fu thought to herself, maybe he's right. Before she could finish speaking, Taki's interpretation of Enbu emerged from the trees and encircled her. They numbered about 10 and were all covered in black masks that obscured their faces. With haste, Fu got to her feet, but before she could move, one of the Anbu set off the seal around her neck, causing her to tumble back to the ground. She wasn't physically hurt by the seal. Rather, it would make her body extremely limp if a ninja who knew how to activate it felt like it or if she attempted to flee. Demon. Out of the Anbu, one spoke. You are hereby under arrest for the murder of our fellow ninja, and sentenced to be executed on the spot. Even though Fu couldn't see their faces, she could tell that they were all grinning beneath them. She looked to the Anbu with a fierce determination they had never seen in her before, and with anger, knowing that this was the end for her, rather than with despair and acceptance at her impending death. The Anbu shook off that look and got ready to use whatever weapon they felt like using to bring her to the ground in agony. They were about to move, but a spear that was traveling quickly in their direction and emitting a bright pink energy stopped them in their tracks. When the spear got between Fu and the Anbu sent to kill her, 4 people with different outfits all of a sudden materialized in front of them. Their clothes were nearly identical to one another, but distinct enough to identify each individual. The tallest of them was decked up in dark sandals and baggy white pants. In addition, he was wearing what appeared to be a long, sleeved black shirt underneath a long, white coat that reached his ankles and bore the black kanjis for fox and wolf on the back. He wore a white wolf mask and had two swords strapped to the left side of his hip. The mask had blue eyes that gave off the impression of being lifeless but were nevertheless visible due to their brightness. Given that the spear was now in her hands, the second person was clearly the one who threw it. She had on a white coat that reached her back with the black centaur kanji on the back, white shorts, and an all-black top that bared her midriff. Her mask had glowing pink eyes and was shaped like a centaur. The third person was wearing tight, white shorts with her hands in the pockets. She wore black sandals up to her knees, a white shirt, and a white coat with the kanji for bat on the back that stopped around her calves. Her mask resembled a bat, and its teal eyes glowed as well. The last one had a black shirt underneath her white coat that only reached her lower back, white sandals, and white pants similar to the boys. In addition to wearing a shark-shaped mask with glowing yellow eyes, she had a broadsword strapped to her back. The four of them stood before Fu, their reactions to the jinchuriki making them feel both protective and bored. The four were observed by the Anbu, who stood watch. "Who are you intruders?" Among the four, one of them made a demand. "You are interfering with the justice that we are dispensing. Make a move so we can eliminate the demon that killed our men." "Are you searching for the person who killed those men?" was the first thing Naruto said in a deeper, somewhat distorted voice that seemed menacing. "Then look no further than right in front of you." "You killed our men?" They heard another Anbu yell at them. He charged the masked wolf teen who was about to strike. "One of those men was my brother, you killed, you bastard." He was about to use his kunai to attack Naruto when all of a sudden, the teenager vanished. The Anbu froze in place when he saw Naruto, one sword drawn, standing behind him. The Anbu turned cautiously to face the teenage boy wearing a wolf mask and opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, his head fell off, leaving a deep cut. Fu was startled by how quickly and accurately the masked teen moved as the Anbu fell to the ground in front of her. The other Anbu stared at what they could hardly see, almost in shock. One of these enigmatic figures easily killed another of their comrades. The ones wearing the centaur and bat masks began to approach them more slowly, so they didn't have time to consider what they should do next. The Anbu got ready to fight back, but as soon as the two disappeared from view, they all began to die. 3 of them died from deadly spear wounds from the centaurs, and the other 3 were struck viciously in the chest by the bat. There were only 3 left at the end. With a swift cut across their bodies, the girl wearing a shark mask charged towards them, wielding a broadsword and severing each of them in 2. Fu was in shock at the devastation she had just seen. The 10 Anbu ninja were completely subjugated by these 4. "Now then." Naruto turned to face Fu and spoke. For a brief moment, the girl tensed at his gaze, but that all changed when he bent down to speak with her. The seal's effect was still being felt. "Let's get rid of this annoying thing right here." His hand glowed a faint red when he touched her neck. Fu was limited to observing this individual while he performed his actions on the seal. Before she noticed a tiny stinging pain on her skin, she was wondering exactly what he was doing. Her skin started to burn a little, and she let out a painful yelp, but she chose to ignore the pain by closing her eyes and swallowing her voice. The burning subsided after a short while, and she opened her eyes. Once her body was moving again, she gave a swift hug to the person who had rescued her from this terrible situation. "Thank you." She repeated herself over and over again, sobbing with happiness. "Thank you so much. Now's not the time for thanks." Sakura adopted Naruto's tone of voice when she spoke. "We have to leave. There will be more here shortly." With a nod from the others, Naruto picked up Fu. They left Taki before she had a chance to object. 4 masked ninja were seen removing their jinchuriki, which was the last thing the ninja who had gone to look into the bodies saw. In conjunction with the 4, they all lay down in a cave far from Taki, and Fu was put down. The fast speed and unfamiliar route caused the mint-haired jinchuriki's legs to become unsteady, causing her to stumble and fall. Fortunately, Hinata managed to catch her in time. "Thanks." As Hinata placed her down, she spoke to her. Now, not that I'm complaining, but just who the heck are you guys? After observing her for a while, two of the four burst out laughing. Haku and Naruto are those. Sakura left to look around the perimeter, and Hinata just grinned beneath her mask. The trio took off their masks to reveal to Fu the well-known faces she had encountered earlier in the day. As the three began to introduce themselves and the plans they had for her, she let out a sigh of relief. It would be an understatement to say that Fu was caught off guard by everything. Though she was ignorant of the terms hollow and hueco mundo, she sensed that they were strangely conveying the truth to her. Their goal was to destroy the corrupt and evil in order to bring about peace, and saving her was their first target. The first of many changes in the elemental nations would come from Chome, the holder of the Nanabi and Jinchuriki of Taki. So, as the four sat in the cave, Fu began. What exactly are you guys gonna do now? Since Naruto was, in a way, their leader, Hinata and Haku turned to him for the solution. When Naruto saw those expressions, he smirked a little and leaned back, allowing himself to relax. Now, we find out just what's going on all around this world. After 2 months, a few villages in the elemental nations were starting to look strange. Taki has been looking for those 4 masked individuals who stole their jinchuriki for the last 2 months, but he hasn't had any luck. To exacerbate matters, every Anbu they dispatched to bring her back was always returned to them in satchels bearing notes. Some advised giving up, while others claimed their ninja are too weak to carry on. But Taki wasn't the only one who dealt with this. Many of the villages began to lock up their jinchuriki after rumors of these 4 masked ninjas stealing Taki's spread. In particular, Kumo and Iwa. During these 2 months, those 2 villages were in poor condition. Particularly Kumo. Shortly after the event involving Taki and the 4, the masked individuals made the decision to attempt stealing Kumo's jinchuriki. But the thing that broke Kumo's heart was how close only the 2 of them were. B and Yugito would have already vanished if it weren't for the raikage and a horde of ninja overpowering the bat and shark. Sadly, those 2 caused them a great deal of casualties because of how unfamiliar their power was to the village. After that attack, at least, the village was still relatively orderly. However, Iwa wasn't as fortunate. Wolf and Centaur were attempting, and succeeding, to take the jinchuriki for the Yanbi and Gobi Biju while Shark and Bat were attacking Kumo. Iwa sustained severe damage, and a pink energy beam fired from the Centaur's mask. Covered mouth even destroyed multiple buildings. Following a brief encounter with Iwa's Tsuchikage, during which the elderly man was remarkably close to death, the group captured Han and Roshi with little opposition from them. During those 2 months, word got out, and the 4 became known as the Hollow 4 because of the hollow expression in their eyes when they killed. Those were the words that came from the miraculously alive survivors of the attack by the 4. As their names became more and more associated with Jinchuriki, a fearful village, other villages began to view them as their saviors. The Hollow 4 would arrive to protect small villages from bandits or ninja who would come to harass them. Some regarded them as heroes who, strangely, never requested payment of any kind. As if they were acting out of need rather than desire. However, after word got out, some tried to enlist the Hollow 4 to aid in the defense of their still struggling home, some people like Kiri Kusa to bolster their numbers. The Land of Iron as a mark of deference to powerful fighters. And Konoha in due course. Sadly, things didn't go as well as they had with the other 3. The 4 graciously declined to have Kiri and Iron accompany them, explaining that their peaceful mission could not be constrained by another person's village. Iron and Kiri accepted that response. After their first rejection, Kusa made numerous attempts to recruit them, but once they turned hostile, the Hollow 4 visited their cage. It's safe to say that nobody was harmed during that meeting, and Kusa left them on their own. However, Konoha wasn't as fortunate. The attempt Konoha made. A month and a half had passed since the 4's actions in Kusa. Konoha was aware of the numerous misadventures these 4 had been involved in across the country, and the council was vying for their authority. Hiruzen was aware that the 4 were extremely skilled ninja who were pursuing Jinchuriki. The only mystery was why they were acting in this manner. Based on the information Jiraiya obtained from his espionage network, 2 teams of S-class ninja were currently attempting to apprehend the Jinchuriki. The first is the Akatsuki, a group of S-ranked missing nin members that numbered in the tens or more. They were unknown except for their desire to remove jinchuriki from the villages for some reason, but they must be furious with the other group. This group of 4 ninjas, known as the Hollow Four, had been capturing jinchuriki one after the other. Takis came first, followed by Iwas, and they nearly had Kumos. All that remained were Sunas and Kumos, and maybe the Rokubi jinchuriki that had vanished from Kiri not too long ago. The fact that 2 jinchuriki had passed away was another. The previous head of both Naruto and Kiri. The elderly man in his office sighed with regret that he had not done more with the now deceased blonde at the mere mention of Naruto. Hiruzen might even have adopted the boy if it weren't for the council's hatred towards him. Perhaps even assign him to one of the few individuals who truly desired him. When they were still living, there were the Ichirakus, Uruka, Anko, and even Makoto Uchiha or Hitomi Hyuga. They genuinely understood the distinction between a prisoner and a prison, unlike their relatives. But this was no time to reopen old wounds. The Hollow Four had little to no reputation. Unknown location, unknown affiliations, unknown power, and unknown status. For the longest time, Jiraiya's spy network was unable to locate them at all, and even Toad Sanin was unable to unearth any information about them. All they knew was that even at Junin's speeds, the group was impossible to follow. They were swift, accurate, merciless when threatened, and kind when called upon. They were designated as S-class ninja with a kill on sight order by Kumo, Iwa, and Taki. However, the same thing always happened when a brazen bandit group or ninja attacked them. Sent organs to those 3 communities. Even just boxes of blood will occasionally be left behind. Hiruzen was in the Shinobi Wars, and he had never been bothered by a group like this before. Since Konoha lacked jinchuriki and the Hollow Four had no reason to visit them, he wanted to leave the group alone, but the council had other ideas. They intended to enlist them all, train Sasuke Uchiha, and then pair the 3 females for breeding, presumably just with Sasuke, with other clans. The original Ino, Shika, Cho, Hiruzen, Tsunade, Jiraiya, Sume, and the elders were the only ones who attempted to stop the council, Danzo, and the elders from trying to do something foolish. Sadly, they lost the vote and were forced to watch as the group was dispatched to find the 4 new members. Along with a few Anbu who were actually Danzo's root and, surprisingly, both Jiraiya and Tsunade, the group consisted of teams 7, 8, Guy, and 10. All Hiruzen could do was observe and pray that the death toll wouldn't be too high. Hiruzen would have fought tooth and nail over the idea of sending Genin on a mission that was obviously out of their debt, but he knew it would all be in vain and didn't even bother. While some might consider that harsh, he saw it as a warning to the gender. The world is more complicated than people would have us believe. Following the announcement that Naruto was the Kyuubi's jinchuriki, a few of those genin experienced a shift in mindset. Kiba, Neji, Sasuke, and, surprisingly, Lee and Ten. 10 are the main characters. At first, they thought it was absurd that Naruto was an actual demon, as the villagers had always claimed, but after this revelation, they realized it made sense. Although Sasuke knew the blonde Dobi was concealing something, he still thought this was fantastic. Sasuke would have had total control over the Kyuubi if he had used his Sharingan earlier. After hearing this, Neji, who had previously viewed Naruto as a bothersome cousin who was deserving of shame, began to view Naruto as a monster destined to die young and Hinata as his demon. Loving whore. Kiba was more outspoken than Ten. 10 in believing that this was an abnormal creature that ought to perish. Lee refused to see him as anything but the antithesis of youthful. The other members of the group showed no interest in the matter at all. After leaving the village to find the Hollow Four, the group eventually got lucky thanks to Jiraiya's spy network. According to reports, the Hollow Four were spotted traveling to Whirlpool from the edge of Fire Country. They were either heading back to Kumo or in the direction of Suna because they were so close. Not that it mattered as long as the group reached them on schedule. The trip to the Whirlpool border took just under a week. As the Konoha shinobi moved toward the point where the waters divided them from the rest of the land, everything appeared to be somewhat peaceful. Looking out into the vast waters and wondering what lies beyond was pleasant to some. Tsunade recalled hearing tales about this location from her grandmother Mito. She almost shed a tear when she realized that she was, in a way, the last of the Uzumaki. All right. Jiraiya raised her voice, grabbing everyone's interest. The reports said that the Hollow Four were spotted somewhere around this border. Break off into teams and see if you can locate them or any traces of them. The Toad Sanin's next words caused the air around them to become even colder. Under no circumstance are you to attack them. We have no ill will with them aside from recruiting them. Nothing more, nothing less. Except for Tsunade, who quickly nodded in agreement, everyone else quickly moved on to pursue the four. This was the Genin's chance to demonstrate their increased strength. For the Root, this meant extending their master's desired power even further. The Sannin saw this as a genuine way to support Konoha and hold out hope that nothing disastrous would happen. Naruto. Naruto was currently sitting in a clearing with a view of Whirlpool's waters. Since Kurama had told him to check this place out, he had felt a connection of sorts. She had been a nuisance, but not as much as she had been in Hueco Mundo. She had softened since coming to this world, if he had to guess. A familiar figure materialized behind Naruto after he had been sitting there for a few minutes. You felt it too? Without even bothering to look back, he asked out loud. Yes. Sakura's ever present, stoic tone spoke up. She strolled alongside him and took a seat next to him. They're familiar to me, most of them. What about you? I remember two of them. Narrowing his eyes at the thought of who was among them, Naruto spoke up. One that was arrogant and prideful, the other. Naruto halted and met Sakura's gaze directly. The one that killed the both of us and Haku. Sakura widened her eyes momentarily before glaring as well, unusually for her. Then we even more reason to kill them. Not yet. Naruto got up and spoke. Why? She got up as well, not particularly taken aback by his refutation. They seek the four of us, but I also sense that a few are after the jinchuriki we have. Naruto elongated a little. Along with this Akatsuki as well. Seems this Konoha group was followed and didn't even realize it. Then that means we can kill two birds with one stone. She made a statement. Get your mask and tell the others to get ready to move out. Naruto yawned a little and placed an order. Everything isn't ready yet, so we can't afford to cause too much damage. Sakura gave a nod and disappeared via Sonido. With a sigh, Naruto took his mask off his belt. After putting it on his face and giving himself several neck cracks, he used Sonido to track down this ninja group. Groups 8 and 10. In order to locate evidence of the Hollow Four, both teams had made the decision to collaborate. It made sense for Team 10 to join since Team 8, the tracker team, would probably need help. Not in the slightest that Kurenai and Asuma were dating. Not at all. Do you really think we'll find them out here? Ino questioned her mentor. I honestly don't know. With the cigarette in his mouth, the man spoke. But if they are here, then we might just catch a break. Hopefully they are. That was Hinata's replacement on Team 8. Saya is her name. She's a little taller than Hinata, a Sasuke fangirl, bold and haughty, with shoulder length black hair. To be honest, it's kind of a downgrade for Team 8. I really can't stand the water here. Why's that? Shikamaru asked her again, this time with a hint of curiosity rather than a desire to go back to sleep. I don't know. It's just way too creepy for my taste. Saya gave him a response. It used to be something better beforehand. They heard a deep, distorted voice speaking to them from above. They all assumed defensive positions as they peered up a tree, where they saw one of the four relaxing on a branch. More accurately, the leader. You must be the leader? Asuma raised his voice, surprised that he had not even noticed the teenager approaching them. I am. He responded. Hey. Kiba grinned haughtily to begin. You don't look so tough. In an instant, Kiba's right eye was just millimeters away from one of Stark's blades. Care to repeat that? At that moment, Kiba lost it and pissed himself. Stark only needed to look at the fear in his eyes to know that he was gone up the tree once more, but this time he was staring down at them all. Is there something you all need, or are you here to just pass by? Judging by the headbands, I'll go by the former instead of the latter. Asuma stepped forward nervously, swallowing the lump in his throat. He turned to look at Kurenai, who gave him a nervous nod before turning around to find Stark standing right in front of him. He gave a slight start before realizing how careless the leader was. The man could tell that the teen was yawning beneath his mask, and he was no taller than Shikamaru or even Choji. My name is Asuma Sarutobi. Junin of the Leaf Village here to offer you in your group. No. Asuma started, but Stark cut her off. No? He questioned tremblingly. Yeah. The answer is no. Stark snapped his neck a couple of times and answered him. What we want is something not many villages have, and we won't waste our time in a village like yours who values traders and tradition over loyalty and family. The two Junin were struck by his words because they sensed he knew what he was talking about. With all due respect, Wolf. Kurenai took the initiative. We would be grateful if you did join our village. Whatever it is you all are searching for, Konoha can help. First off, name's not Wolf. The group was taken aback for a moment. Name's Stark. Get it right, please. Second of all, there is nothing any of you can do to assist us in what we want. And what exactly is that? As he joined the group, a fresh voice spoke up. That voice belonged to Tsunade, who was accompanied by Jiraiya, Guy, Team 7, and the Anbu team. Under his mask, Stark cast a bored glance at her. With a sigh, he slipped his hands into his pockets. That's for us to know and none of you to figure out. Then tell me, where do you all come from? Jiraiya made the decision to poke the Gaki for answers in the hopes that he would reveal his true identity. What business do you have with jinchuriki? And what exactly is your end game? So many questions. They all went into defensive positions as Stark spoke, turning to face the white-haired Sanin. All right. Guess I can at least answer a few of those questions. Sheepishly, he scratched the back of his head. Where we're from is of little concern to anybody, but if you insist on asking. We came from a place of sand and chaos. Death in all directions, a feed or be fed upon mentality. No place for any of you. That can't be Suna, can it? Kakashi questioned, trying and failing to see past Sasuke's mask. No. This place is of no importance to us anymore. Stark carried on. What our business with the jinchuriki is, well, that's our little secret now. Upon noticing the twitch in the Anbu surrounding him, Stark realized they weren't there for talks. And the last question you had, well, the endgame is the same as the endgame in war. At the sound of this, the Junin and Sanin gasped and reacted defensively. And what would that truly be? Tsunade questioned, her fists clenched and her eyes narrowed. Simple. Taking his hands out of his pockets and pointing a finger to his left, where the Anbu were, Stark spoke. Purging the sinners. The group of 12 root Anbu were instantly killed as multiple blue beams of unknown energy flew at them before anyone could say anything. With dismay, everyone observed that entire sections of the Anbu had vanished. A few people lost their lunches after witnessing the graphic scene that would haunt them forever. Lowering his arm, Stark returned it to his pocket. When the other four appeared next to Stark, the remaining group stood still for a brief moment before jumping in shock and terror. Now, you all know what one of us can do. Stark got going. This is your only warning. Come after us again, and the next batch of bodies will be the ones within your village's walls. At his words, the Konoha shinobi tensed and opened his eyes wide. Bye now. The Hollow Four vanished completely in an instant, leaving their warning visible in every sense of the word. Uzu's ruins. The Konoha group fled the border and raced back to Konoha to notify their Hokage following Stark's warning and power demonstration. What they had just witnessed still left them all speechless. Without hesitation and without warning, Stark destroyed the Anbu. Could he have known they were root? Should he have, he would have known Danzo, and in that scenario, he was probably a former Konoha shinobi. They just kept jumping from tree branch to tree branch, not understanding that. But the four of them were gathered around a fire in one of the few areas of the destroyed village of Uzu that was still partially intact. The book library. Sakura was grinning as she recalled the scared shitless expression on both Kakashi and Sasuke's faces, while Naruto was lounging as usual and grinning broadly at what he had done. Hinata and Haku were laughing at the expressions on their faces when he used his Sero on those rude Anbu. Han, Roshi, and Fu were also present. Of the three, Fu laughed the most. So you made one of them shit themselves, then killed all those other guys? Fu questioned between chuckles. Yeah, that's about right. Naruto responded to her. Had to send a message somehow. Well, be that as it may. Roshi began, grabbing everyone's interest. You still haven't told us just why we're here, or what you plan to do with us and the other jinchuriki. That's simple. This time Hinata led the way. All anyone cares about is power and control. Their greed being the deciding factor to everything that happens in this world. They don't want peace or true order. All they care about is power. A plague on this world that we have the responsibility to be rid of. So you take away their jinchuriki to destabilize that power? Roshi asked, his eyes wide. Yes. Sakura responded. Villages like Iwa, Taki and Kumo are filled with a lust for power that needs to be purged from this world. The three jinchuriki froze at her words as she continued in a stoic tone. It also doesn't hurt our progress to disrupt a group of S-class ninja from taking you all away for their own selfish and power-hungry ways. Right now, we're going to be using these ruins as a base of sorts for now. Naruto sat up and began. This place is special from what I've been able to find out. Apparently my clan used to live here, up until they were all killed by power. Hungry men who feared their power. A power that was used not for violence but peace. They received no assistance because Konoha wanted their jinchuriki for the power as all things dumbed down too. He got up and carried on. That jinchuriki was my mother. Hearing this, the three jinchuriki in attendance were taken aback. Konoha wanted her, so they let this place that was once filled with life and hope be destroyed because of their greed. I owe it to my clan and my mother retribution for that. At least until Haku asked, he started to leave the group. Where are you going? Naruto halted and gave them a sharp glance. To learn from my clan's past, to make a better future. He nodded to his friends, who returned the nod before making their way to the rear staircase. Naruto attempted to look past the emptiness of it all, but the others chose to ignore the empty room at the bottom of the library, which was meant to be ignored by people who are not Uzumaki. After a few minutes, he managed to see through the ceiling and find what he was searching for. Uzumaki archives. 1 week later, Konoha. After observing the leader, now known as Stark, instantly inflicted damage on the Anbu squad, the group dispatched to find the Hollow Four eventually returned. The group's responses to the idea that one man, or more accurately, a teenager, could do that were mixed. Some believed that power to be as dangerous and uncontrollable as the rumors claimed. These were the group's wise members who were unwilling to engage in combat with the Four. They considered that power to be well beyond their capabilities. Others believed they should have that kind of authority. That was mostly just Sasuke and, somewhat unexpectedly, Kakashi. They were unable to see through Stark's mask or imitate the jutsu he was using. Whatever it was, they believed they deserved it and wanted it. As the group returned to the Hokage to report what they had seen and understood to be flawed, it no longer mattered. Hiruzen wondered aloud what this meant for Konoha as he listened to two of his former three students. It was obvious that the Hollow Four wanted to purge the sinners, but what did that really mean? What were their objectives, and what made jinchuriki necessary? There are too many unanswered questions. When Jiraiya described the leader's move against the Anbu, Hiruzen raised an eyebrow. It wasn't the best description, blinding blue lights fired from his fingertip, but it fit the accounts of survivors of their attacks. The Four could employ light-based jutsu in some way. That's what Hiruzen was hoping for, anyhow. Not surprisingly, the council was enthralled with this newfound knowledge. Hiruzen quickly put an end to their plan to list these four in the bingo book with AS ranked, kill. On. Sight, order. Two reasons for this were that the Four were never a part of Konoha in the first place and that they didn't need the pressure of actually bringing in those funds for AS ranked bounty. At one point, despite their current situation with Iwa, the council had attempted to choose to send more of their forces to locate and capture the Four, but that decision was swiftly rejected. Sadly, Danzo still dispatched his root Anbu to either kill or capture the Four. At the moment, Sasuke was enraged. He was shown a power that was unlike anything he had ever seen in his life, and he believed it belonged to an unworthy person. He should have that power because he was a Uchiha. It was only right for him. He needed that power to exact revenge on his clan and kill Itachi, regardless of what the other four wanted with the jinchuriki. He would then rebuild his clan as he saw fit, using those three girls as breeding stock. When he returned home following the mission and debriefing, he discovered a note taped to his door. Sasuke. Come by here by midnight tonight if you want to seek out the power of those four. Bring your equipment. The brief note contained meeting location coordinates, so Sasuke read it and grinned ill-wittedly. He was going to get the authority he so richly deserves. Returning with the quartet. Sensing that the Konoha group had been followed by two uninvited guests earlier in the evening, Haku had kept a close eye on things. As the most perceptive of the four, she was instructed to keep an eye out for any movement and chose to remain atop a sizable tree that provided a good view of the surrounding forest. She smiled as the two began to move as she peered into the distance and felt the energy of two men who weren't too far away. Putting on her mask, Haku blinked off, anticipating what would happen next. Do you really believe that load of bullshit, Kakuzu? The voice came from a gray-haired man wearing a dark cloak with red clouds on it and a red scythe resting on his shoulder. You should never underestimate your enemy, Hidan. Kakuzu, a towering man dressed in the same attire, responded to his companion. These four may have 3 of the jinchuriki, but their powers are still unknown to us. Leader has asked that we only examine and watch until they make their move. Fuck that. As the two hurried to the location where the 4 and the jinchuriki would be, Hidan yelled. There's no fucking point in just sitting around if we can just get our prizes and kill a few heathens in the process. Moving forward, Kakuzu merely shook his head as they approached the remains of Uzushiogakure. Just as they were drawing near, Kakuzu sensed something wasn't quite right. There was a sinking sensation in the pit of his stomach, a pang of impending danger that had to be avoided at all costs. He turned to face his partner and opened his mouth to say something akin to a warning, but then he noticed that Hidan was now wearing a long spear through his skull. The multiple hard man didn't realize it until the spear whizzed past him and impaled him onto a tree. Hidan! Kakuzu cried out, seeing his partner swearing hysterically as he futilely attempted to break free. I was wondering when you two would come out of your hiding spot. From right behind the man came the distorted voice of one of the 4. Kakuzu leapt clear of her and turned to face her, her arms tucked beneath her breasts. So you must be the centaur. With a sneer at how easily she'd slipped up behind him, he asked. Nalil. She turned to face him and said something. It's nice to meet you. Kakuzu took a stance as the person who was now Nalil approached him. Her mannerisms, rather than her voice or mask, were what made her peculiar. She appeared overly at ease. It was almost as though she knew that fighting these two would be easy. Kakuzu remained vigilant, scanning her for a vulnerability or an opening. Though it was still only a rumor, he had heard that the 4 could unleash a chakra blast that would destroy their opponents completely. With an opponent he knew very little about and powers he could neither understand nor predict, Kakuzu started to perspire. But before he could move, Nalil interrupted him with her next query. Tell me something. Why exactly are you and your organization after the jinchuriki? That is of no concern to you or your group. Kakuzu began getting ready to put on one of his masks. That's a shame. She began by repeatedly stretching to the side. I'd rather not fight you and your associate, so I'll ask you to leave peacefully, please. Kakuzu was surprised by this. She was urging Hidan and him to turn away immediately or face her. In many ways, this was a golden opportunity for the avaricious Akatsuki member. The 4 had collective bounties on their heads that would have made any man extremely wealthy, but they also had personal bounties, each being a significant quantity. Though his sensible mind was considering her offer, Kakuzu was strongly tempted to fight her, to take his chances and let his greed speak for him at this very moment. She possessed strength he had never seen before, as well as a fighting style and jutsu he had never used. It seemed like a good idea to fight her, but it also seemed like a bad idea. In the event that he defeated her in battle, he would have eliminated one of the hollow 4 opponents of the Akatsuki and would have added her heart and the sizable bounty on her head to his collection. Make decisions, make decisions. Sadly, he was interrupted from fully considering his response by a loud shout coming from behind him. You fucking heretic. When he managed to extract the spear, Hidan let out a shout. I'm going to sacrifice you to Jashin, you whore. Hidan charged at the still calm team, blindly and furiously. Upon reaching her, he swung his massive scythe in an attempt to take her life prematurely and offer her as a sacrifice to his god. Kakuzu observed and felt that something wasn't quite right. The girl did not respond. She wasn't trying to block with her hands, nor was she trying to dodge. At that moment, he came to the realization that she wasn't trying anything because she had knowledge that they didn't. Hidan, wait. Though it was a little bit too late, Kakuzu called out to his partner. To their surprise, Nalil raised her left hand and caught Hidan's weapon's blade in the palm of her hand. She caught the scythe and a tiny bit of dust blew around her feet, but other than that, she was completely unfazed. Then you leave me no choice. She pulled back her right arm and her spear materialized in her hand as she spoke. Hidan was taken aback by what he had just witnessed, but he didn't worry because he was immortal. Feeling the spear drive home into his chest, he grinned. Is that all you got, bitch? He began to cackle hysterically and taunted. It's gonna take a lot more than that to do me in. I know. The zombie pair were shocked and surprised when Nalil broke into a scythe with her clenched left hand. Using her free left hand, she reached for the lower portion of her mask and raised it to reveal her mouth to the two. It didn't matter that they couldn't see the rest of her face at the moment. The fact that she had given him her entire mouth was what mattered. Hey. What the fuck is this supposed to be? Hidan grinned as he spoke to her. Am I supposed to be scared or so met? Nalil shot a pink light beam in his direction, but he didn't get very far. The beam consumed his skull, instantly destroying it before she dealt with the remainder of the body. The insane immortal Jashin priest was reduced to nothing in a matter of seconds, not even ash. Kakuzu was paralyzed with fear when he saw this. That was something he had never seen before. That attack's strength and ferocity were astounding in addition to being devastating. Nalil clamped her mouth shut and put her mask back on, completely encasing her energy beam. She put her spear down by her side and turned to face Kakuzu. Either stay and be destroyed, or leave. With a dark aura of energy emanating from her spear, she spoke to him. Kakuzu felt as though he was staring at his impending death as he looked into her eyes, or rather, the area where her eyes should have been hidden by the mask. Sensing his chance, Kakuzu turned and fled, telling the other Akatsuki members of what had transpired. Although Akatsuki had suffered a great loss, they had also gained important knowledge about one of the four. Nalil let out an annoyed sigh as Kakuzu walked away. She truly didn't want to fight anyone, but when one of them charged right at her, she had no choice but to comply. She surprised the jinchuriki but not the others when she turned around and sonitoed back to the campsite. Haku. Sakura was sitting on the ground when she began. I take it you killed one. After removing her mask, Haku sighed and sat down beside Fu. Unfortunately, it was one of those Akatsuki members we heard about. The one who couldn't die and the one with multiple hearts. I killed the priest guy. Roshi and Han stiffened. The last time they faced the Jashin priest, they narrowly avoided defeat. It was astounding to hear that this teenager easily defeated and even killed him. Well, I guess that means we can't stay here for too long then. Naruto got up from his sitting position and spoke. I have what we need from here, so we can move out at dawn. The others nodded, knowing full well that things would soon get worse for some of the individuals involved in this. Hideout of Akatsuki. What do you mean Hidan is dead? Along with the others, the leader's enigmatic form spoke up to Kakuzu from his holographic position in an irate tone. The leader's harshness made Kakuzu tense, and he briefly stopped sweating before sharing what he knew so far. He described how he and Hidan surreptitiously tracked the Konoha team to the location of the four, including the jinchuriki, without omitting any information. How, from their distant vantage point, the leader, now known as Stark, obliterated multiple Enbu members in a flash of light. Following Stark's warning to the group, they ran into the person who is now known as Nalil. Reactions from the other group members were mixed. Some people laughed at what Nalil had done to the supposedly immortal, while others were shocked by it. But Obito piqued my curiosity the most out of all of them. Even though he was aware of the Hollow Four prior to their abduction of Jinchuriki, he didn't give them much thought, assuming they were a group of hired guns of some sort. But now, they were a pain in his side as he tried to carry out his ambitious plan. Somehow, they would have to be addressed. With a frustrated sigh, the leader concluded Kakuzu's report. That means we need to move quickly. Though these Hollow Four believe they can stop us, the truth is that they are just making our work much easier. Zetsu. Next to Kakuzu, the half. Plant, half. Man creature rose from the earth. You will monitor these 4 and report back to me once you find where they are going along with their weaknesses and strengths. Yes, leader. First to speak was the white half. You want to report on the other jinchuriki as well? The half black man asked brashly. He started when the leader gave him a nod. Well, the Ichibi continues to serve as soon as Kei's cage inside its walls. Although he is well protected, Sasori and Deidara are not up to the task. Both the Nibi and the Hachibi are still in Kumo and are under protection. The black portion persisted after the white portion began. However, the Sanbi and the Rokubi are still absent. The Roku for an unidentified reason, and the San due to the conflict in Mist. Who knows for sure, but it was probably also the Mist Civil War. The white portion concluded. Then there are the Hollow Four holding the Yanbi, Gobi, and Shichibi. Finally, the Kyubi was slain some time ago, but his body hasn't been discovered. That final bit of information made the group leader sigh, and he turned to face the others. At this point, it is irrelevant. We proceed as scheduled with the others. While Kakuza will concentrate on obtaining the Nibi with assistance from Tobi, Sasori and Deidara will retrieve the Ichibi, Itachi and Kisame will locate the Sanbi and, if feasible, the Rokubi. Recognized? Ah. Tobi began by looking at his hologram. Tobi didn't want to hang around Zombie Boy. The group leader, incensed over the news he had just received, largely disregarded his complaints as the meeting was called to order. Returning with the 4. The 7 some left the ruins of Uzu in no time at all. As a matter of fact, the 4 had woken the Jinchuriki and made them ready to depart even before the sun rose. Fu was a little slow, but Han and Roshi could tell that the 4 were serious about leaving now. Primarily because she remained asleep. The group prepared to depart after Hinata's rather amusing wake up act, which involved dumping water on Fu's face. So, where are we going? With a curious tone, Han questioned Naruto. We still need to find the others. Sakura's voice was as usual. But we can't simply leave you 3 alone in the open while we do so. Are you implying that we're weak? She said that in a way that seemed insulting, and Roshi became agitated. What Sakura means is that the Akatsuki will take any advantage they can to get to you 3 while we take care of things. Speaking, Naruto calmed the man down. I discovered a location in the archives that will temporarily hide the whereabouts of you 3 and the others. That's our destination. He nodded to the other members of the Hollow Four, who returned the nod before grabbing one of Jinchuriki's shoulders. This momentarily perplexed them, and in that instant the group of 7 vanished with a sudden burst of speed. All of a sudden, they found themselves at the entrance to a lush forest that was actually some sort of cave. As soon as they got there, Roshi knelt down with his hands on his knees, Han felt sick, and Fu hurried into a bush to throw what little food was left in her stomach. What the hell was that? When Han calmed down, he inquired. That doesn't matter for now. As he and his group began to enter the cave, Naruto responded to him. When they recovered and went inside, the Jinchurikis did the same. They followed the 4 as they descended farther into the cave. The light from outside dwindled to nothing, and the darkness of it all started to swallow them. Sakura lit the path with her energy, creating a tiny sero in the palm of her hand. The group carried on until they came to an impasse. Fu scratched her head and began. So are we supposed to just wait in this dark cave for you guys or? We're here. She was interrupted by Naruto, who smeared blood on the wall while biting down on his thumb. Nothing happened at first. The 4 watched on, and the Jinchuriki were nervous because at first they didn't know what to expect. Roshi was about to express his disapproval when a big seal started to glow bright red along the cave wall. The 4 were prepared, and the 3 watched in shock. A beautiful sight was revealed as the wall began to part like a gate. There was a sizable city of some sort inside, situated in what appeared to be a crater. The buildings were old and dilapidated, the earth was cracked from years of weather, there was dust everywhere, and there was a waterfall that formed a river just outside the city, cascading down from a high opening. The hole where the water was coming from was the only source of light inside. When Naruto took the lead and extended his finger, the others gasped in shock. With a direct aim at the source of the water, he unleashed a blue Sero charge that startled the Jinchuriki. What are you? Fu was about to say something when Naruto launched a tiny ball of energy in the direction of the waterfall. It joined and created a sizable hole that let in a lot more water as well as more light. It started to encircle the city in large numbers, and the water came rushing down. The city started to glow from the ground after that. The Jinchuriki were shocked by this, but Sakura, Hinata, and Haku were taken aback. It's a seal. Han raised his voice. Yes. As he bent over and brushed some dirt over, Naruto began. A faded-out kanji for release was visible on it. With a sly smile, Naruto cut his thumb and positioned it on the kanji. Time to see what it really looks like. After Naruto wiped his blood on it, the city abruptly started to glow violently. The city started to fade in as the buildings started to disappear, almost like a mirage. They all saw it when it happened. A thriving metropolis full of redheads. The Uzumaki clan's remnants. A typical waterfall appeared, and the hole that Naruto had shot had vanished. Near the river, there were crops being grown and people taking care of them. A school where kids are having fun outside or honing their ninja techniques. A sizable structure in the middle of the village, not the city. People were going about their daily lives in the village when all of a sudden they looked to the cave entrance and noticed the 7 unexpected guests. The 7 were surrounded by ninja wearing dark blue outfits with black pants and vest and a headband bearing the Uzumaki symbol. The 4 just stood calmly and unperturbed, while Han, Roshi, and Fu readied themselves. Who are you, and how did you enter our home? A man in front of them narrowed his eyes at them, tanto drawn. Surely there was no way for anyone to get past the seals? That's what the elder said. Who were these individuals? Those were just a few of the ideas running through everyone's head when they saw the visitors at the entrance, high above. Naruto began, to answer your question, displaying absolutely no fear in his body language. He actually yawned and gave a sheepish scratch to the back of his head. My name is Stark, leader of the Hollow 4. He gestured to the others. Halibal, Nalil, and Ulquiorra are here. The Jinchuriki that we freed are the others. Naruto hesitated while the ninja prepared. They've occasionally heard of the 4, too. Then why are you here, and how did you get here in the first place? With a harsh tone, the man asked. Naruto grinned. That's simple. I go by Naruto in real life. Son of Kushina Uzumaki, the princess of Uzushiogakure, is Naruto Uzumaki. The results were felt practically right away. The ninja were taken aback because they did not anticipate the heir's survival. That would explain their success in getting through. Seals could only be broken by someone of the proper bloodline. The man said, if that is true, as the ninja started to loosen up. Then I must take you to our leader. Who exactly is your leader? Crossing her arms, Hinata posed the question. Sheathing his tanto, the man gave the order for the others to form a guard around them. They turned to follow him as he turned and started to walk. At that point, he responded. His name is Mito Uzumaki. The 4 were currently being led through the affluent village along with the Jinchuriki. Beneath this mountain, completely forgotten or unseen by the outside world, the surviving members of the Uzumaki clan continued to thrive. It was therefore not surprising to see the disquietude on the faces of everyone they passed in the streets. The ninja were guiding them to one of the most ornate structures in the village, albeit one of a somewhat smaller scale than the Hokage Tower. The building was approximately 3 stories high, with a prominent Uzumaki swirl imprinted on the front directly above the doors. It was constructed of a transparent mahogany wood that gleamed in the few patches of sunlight that hit it. A group of people had gathered and were watching them walk towards the building. They were slightly nervous about who these people were, but they were also excited about what was about to happen. The group was surrounded by the rest of his squad as the previous ninja, a fairly tall, light-skinned man with dark violet eyes, short red hair tied up, and a scar along the left side of his face leading to his neck, stood in front of them. Once we enter, show your utmost respect to the elder. As the man unlocked the doors and ushered them inside, they all nodded. The interior appeared as lovely as the exterior as they stepped inside. High pillars in the hallways, polished wood floors, and furnishings for what appeared to be a sort of waiting area. It was a nice building all around. While leading them up to the top floor via a set of stairs, the man continued to cast sidelong glances at Naruto. His mind kept returning to the possibility that this boy was Princess Kushina's heir. If so, where had he been hiding all this time? When they arrived at a pair of doors, the man felt uneasy about something. There was a loud crash inside, followed by a shout, as the man went to knock. "Goddamn paperwork." At this, the ninja sighed, the four of them arched an eyebrow together, and the jinchuriki just stopped perspiring. With hesitation, the man knocked on the door, and something crashed inside. "If this is someone with more paperwork, I swear I will send someone to the fucking moon." The forceful yell caused the door to sway and suddenly open, revealing a woman facing them with a furious expression on her face. She had a purple diamond in the middle of her forehead, long, bright red hair tied up into two buns on each side of her head, pupilless brown eyes, fair skin, and a fairly tall build. She was dressed simply in a white shirt and form-fitting black pants that accentuated her curves. She was furious with the man in front of her right now and was hoping he had more paperwork so she could use it as justification to send someone to the moon. When she realized it was just one of her fellow ninja with some strange faces behind him, she became less agitated. "Ito," she began in a lovely voice that made the now named Ito shudder. "Who exactly are these people that I have never seen before?" Ito swallowed the lump in his throat, witnessing the destruction inside the room along with everyone else. There were papers everywhere, some of them burned or still burning, couch stuffing everywhere, a ceiling fan suspended from a single wire, and a desk that was inexplicably impaled against a wall. One of the questions the guests were asking themselves was, how exactly did she do that? "Well, Lady Mito, this group broke through the seal and entered here themselves." Mito arched an eyebrow at Edo's response. She glanced at the seven and ultimately settled on the one in front. There was something familiar about him. And how exactly did the breakthrough, Ito? She gazed at Naruto, who gave her an impassive look in return. "Well, it is actually the one whom you are staring at, Lady Mito." As Ito saw his leader glaring at the leader of the four, he responded. "He claims to be an Uzumaki." After a brief moment of narrowing her eyes, Mito said, Uzumaki spoke up. "If the archives in the Uzumaki vaults in Uzu were accurate, I didn't think you would still be alive today." "Lady Mito, I don't find it surprising that you still have the same appearance as you did in your heyday." Mito squinted at him, her eyes picking up on the subtle jab at her style. "And just who are you exactly? I understand that you are the one who cracked the seal." "I am." With a respectful bow of his head, Naruto responded to her. "My name is Uzumaki Naruto, son of Kushina Uzumaki, princess of Uzushiogakure." "Lady Mito, your heir." Mito reacted instantly, opening his mouth wide and letting his jaw drop. She retreated a step and gave the boy a quick once over. She let out a relieved gasp when he lifted his head and gave her a gentle look in the eyes. Even though he doesn't resemble Kushina at all, her strength and compassion were evident in those eyes. The same characteristics that set Kushina apart in the past. Mito found it difficult to accept her death, particularly after learning via a rumor that the princess had a child who perished in the Kyuubi attack. It's safe to say Mito was relieved those rumors weren't real. If that is the case, Mito grinned and began. "Then, now is the moment to rejoice. The son of Kushina has now made his way back to his family." The first true, sincere smile Naruto had given her since returning to this world with his friends. It was good that there was finally a place he could call home, but this was going to be a long explanation with a lot of details omitted. During that time, Konoha. As soon as the village learned of the Hollow Four's power, everyone was in a frenzy. The majority wanted the village to defeat and use them, while the astute ones wanted nothing to do with them at all. There was a similar split among the Konoha 12, but it was narrow. Kiba was so pissed off at that would-be ninja that he froze. Akamaru remained silent, terrified beyond belief by Stark's strength. Kiba was a vengeful man who would stop at nothing to get his retribution. He would later use those girls, especially the shark one, as his personal bitches. Neji discovered that these hideous creatures were sent here by fate as a test for him. His delusion of fate told him that it was predetermined that he would kill them and that the four would ultimately perish at the hands of a formidable Hyuga prodigy. True enough, delusional. With Danzo and Kakashi, Sasuke had been training like a madman, determined to seize the power that Stark had demonstrated to them. It should come as no surprise that Sasuke only desired their ability to kill Itachi, but Kakashi and Danzo wanted him to subdue the four in order to serve Konoha. Likewise hallucinatory. The three individuals in question were the ones who were most incensed and desired power, glory, or retribution from the other four. The others, however, were deeply shaken by what they witnessed. Stark only needed to lift a finger to completely destroy the Anbu. Who would want to put up with that kind of fight? That incident had left the Ino, Shika, Sho trio damaged, and they had no desire to interact with those four at all. Shikamaru found it far too bothersome to deal with anyone who appeared lazier than him and had the ability to kill with a single motion. Every time Choji remembered that day, he kept losing his lunch, and as a result, he lost a little weight. To no avail, Ino attempted to compel herself to forget the memory using her family's jutsu. Shino didn't care about the four. To him, they were just an impediment that shouldn't be tried to overcome. Saya was essentially in the same situation as Ino, but she lacked the sophisticated strategies that Ino had. Although Lee thought the group was older, he couldn't help but wonder how powerful they were. The Bushi. Brio Genin found it amazing that they could vanish and resurface without leaving any evidence behind. To get to that strength, he would need to train even more. 10. 10 didn't care at all because her main concern was where the four obtained their weapons. They were also the same for the Junin sensei. Kakashi desired to apprehend them. Asuma and Kurenai desired to be left alone. Guy desired to combat them. When Tsunade and Jiraiya saw what Stark had done, they were at a loss for words. They had seen everything in their years as shinobi, but Stark proved to them that they were seeing something that had never been seen before. And all by a teenager, too. I hope they wouldn't have to send any of the four back to fight him. At this point, the idea felt like suicide. After all, none of the Sannin would do anything to agitate them at this point, would they? Otto. Orochimaru's somewhat feminine voice began as he was receiving a report about the Hollow Four from Danzo. This might be interesting after all. Either way, it had to happen eventually. Hideout of Akatsuki. Pain was not content. Not even close. Zetsu had recently returned following his simultaneous losses of the Hollow Four and the Jinchuriki. He claimed to have seen them in the ruins of Uzu, after which they simply disappeared. It was one thing that they killed Hidan, but it was quite another to totally avoid the Akatsuki spy master. For all the other hidden villages in the elemental lands, Pain was terribly disadvantaged by not knowing who these four were or how strong they were. From now on, he would have to proceed with caution. Who knows what the four of them could do when things get serious, considering how easily one of them could have killed Hidan. Are you alright, Pain? From behind the man came the voice of a woman. Pain turned to see Conan, his nearest ally, eyeing him warily. He looked out a window at the wet countryside and turned back. It is the Hollow Four. He spoke in a tone that suggested irritation. Not only have they taken 4 Jinchuriki from us, but they have also eluded us once more. Conan let out a sigh, knowing that those 4 were giving her friend a lot of headaches. With a composed tone, she asked, turning back to face him. So what do we do? In response, Pain scowled out the window. When I confront them, they will know that they should never have defied a god. Conan knew he was too far gone by now, so she looked down with disappointment. Updated Uzu. There was a party going on right now in a big dining hall to celebrate the return of the Uzumaki clan's lost heir. The entire village was present since they had prepared an enormous feast for not only Naruto's return, but also for his entourage and guests. The evening was full of hilarious entertainment from some of the oddballs in the clan, delicious food, and a generally happy atmosphere. Seated beside Mito, Naruto savored a drink of her own sake and relished the fact that, for once this month, she was free from paperwork. Sakura and Hinata were seated across from them and were actually having a good talk with a few of the attendees. Haku had joined in the fun, playing tag with the kids and chasing them. The Jinchuriki were eating and mingling, taking in the festivities as well. With a satisfied sigh, Mito closed her 3rd bottle of sake and turned to face Naruto. I seriously can't believe what you just told me. She spoke for a while in a bewildered tone. Let me clarify this now. After being killed years ago along with your friends, were taken to another world by these powerful beings, died there, and were later brought back to life by Kami to bring peace to this world? Naruto, did I really get all of that? Naruto leaned back in his chair, grinning. That's the shortened version, yes. Leaning back in her chair, Mito gazed up at the ceiling with a sigh. Oh my god. Our family has experienced enough strange events, I don't think anything more could happen to it. Naruto furrowed his brow. What do you mean? Mito let out another sigh and gave him another half serious glance. I'm gonna assume that you've noticed the genjutsu I'm using, right? She went on when she noticed him nod. The problem is that only Uzumakis by blood are able to use this genjutsu. This means that anybody else who tries it will just get older more quickly, but it also has a strange side effect. What's that? Naruto narrowed his eyes and asked her. The user seems to stop aging entirely. Mito's eyes were downcast as she spoke. That explains how you're still here then. Naruto raised his voice to catch her interest. During the invasion of Uzu, you employed this jutsu to return to your best self. You took that action to safeguard your family and ultimately withdraw with them. Mito grinned. Creative. I most certainly didn't receive that from Kushina. The two laughed a little bit as the evening wore on and they drank more sake. Mito took Naruto and his allies to her office as the celebration was coming to an end to talk about their next course of action. Right now, our goal is to liberate the current jinchuriki. Sakura's voice was stoic. Well, from what I've heard, Kumo treats its jinchuriki nicely and fairly. With her arms crossed over her new desk, Mito said. Aside from them, there's also the one-tailed jinchuriki being unstable due to his seal, the three tails dead now, and the six tails is missing. You're well informed. Hinata's eyes narrowed as she spoke. We have our own spies all around some of the major villages. Unfazed by Hinata's glare, Mito answered. Aside from the traitorous Konoha, we have eyes and ears almost everywhere. That explains how you knew of the four of us so easily. Naruto got going. Be that as it may, we're going to need a place to lay low and bring other jinchuriki to so we can start the next step. You're welcome to stay here and so are your allies in the jinchuriki. Mito grinned as she spoke. But be aware that they are in a village full of the best seal masters around, so watch out if they start any trouble. Naruto, I advise you to ensure that things don't get out of hand too quickly. Nodding, Naruto and the others left the office to look for a temporary place to live. But Mito's next word stopped them before they could go. If you're gonna go and get other jinchuriki, then I know the one tail is going to be in the Chunin exams held in Konoha next week. She smiled at the four of them as they came to a halt and turned to face her. Just fruit for though. Konoha. Sasuke was training like a crazy man right now with Kakashi and Danzo. In order to defeat the Hollow Four and seize their power for himself, he needed to become stronger in addition to killing his brother at this time. As Kakashi was teaching him more fire-based jutsu and even his highly coveted Chidori technique, his haughtiness was evident. Sasuke found it easy enough to pick up the moves by simply observing Kakashi and Danzo and incorporating them into his own style. Nobody noticed the small snake that was observing everything with great interest during this time. Orochimaru had a keen interest in the Hollow Four despite being well prepared for the Chunin exams and obtaining the young Uchiha's body. If he could locate them and persuade them to accompany him in destroying Konoha, he might even be able to steal a body or two for his own use later on. Yes, there were countless options if everything went according to his plan. Orochimaru still desired for the four to accompany him, even though he felt the need to destroy them for stealing their jinchuriki. Excited and proud that he was allowed to take the Chunin exams, Sasuke left the training area as it was coming to an end and headed home. He was so self-absorbed that, upon arriving at his house, he failed to notice the pair of red, Sharingan eyes that were observing him from a distance. I can't believe you. A female voice hushed in as they vanished into the darkness. Konoha 1 week later. It was now time for the Chunin exams to be held in Konoha, much to Hiruzen's dismay. Exam season has been an extremely strange and even dangerous time of year. Primarily as a result of which villages took part in it. No one would ever forget that year, for sure. This time, Suna, a village allied with Konoha, will be taking the exams. The team is made up of the notorious Sand siblings. Hiruzen is already aware of their identity. It was very easy to tell which children belonged to the Kazekage. There was Ichibi Jinchuriki, Gaara. There was Kankuro, the puppeteer with a strange fixation on war paint. And there was Tamari, the blonde wind mistress. Hiruzen would have to exercise extra caution this time around if the reports about that one are accurate. There was also a team from Grass that entered through the gates with an eerily familiar presence behind them, a group from Otto that hovered around Grass, a group from Kumo of all places that were said to have the two-tailed jinchuriki with them, and to the old man's surprise, a group from Iwa. Even though Iwa had strong feelings for Konoha, particularly the Yellow Flash, they gave in and grudgingly took the exams. The fact that the Tsuchikage's granddaughter was in their group indicated that this would be an extremely fascinating exam. Other groups from all over the place joined in as well, though none of them were particularly notable or posed a threat to Konoha as a whole. The elderly Cage found one group particularly peculiar. Even though there was just one genin team in this group with their sensei, he was drawn to them because of their appearance and the symbol on their headband. The first genin appeared to be a girl no older than 12, but her development was good. She had a heart-shaped face and was rather tall. Her hair was short and spiky red, marring the right side of her head, and her eyes were a deep gray. She had on a battle kimono in black and red that gave her flexibility and movement, along with black leggings and sandals. However, there was a reason for some concern as she appeared to be carrying no weapon. Her forehead was covered by her headband. Another girl with her arms folded behind her head came in next. She had a developing body and appeared to be around 12 or 13 years old. Compared to the first girl, she had a much more disheveled appearance and mannerism. Her hair was bright red and tied in a topknot. Her eyes were a brilliant green. There was a scar on her face that extended from below her chin to her left cheek. Her headband was around her narrow waist, and she had on an all-black shirt, dark red pants, and black sandals. She had no weapons on her person either. The last one was a small boy, maybe 10 years old, who was simply surveying his surroundings while grinning. His short red hair reached his shoulders, and his eyes were a deep blue color. Apart from his eyes, there wasn't anything particularly unique about his face. However, he appeared to be the most different from the girls in terms of his attire. Rather than dressing in red or black, he wore what appeared to be white cargo shorts with several pockets on each leg and a blue shirt with the kanji for water on the back. In addition, he didn't have a weapon on him and was wearing white sandals. He had his headband around his neck. Their sensei was a tall, robust woman with nearly black eyes, long, silky red hair, and fair complexion. Underneath a black battle kimono with red streaks along the sides and hem, she wore a junin vest. Like the first girl, she was also wearing black leggings and casual sandals. Along with her genin squad, the woman surveyed the village with a look of wonder and awe, but like those three, she carried no weapons that were visible. She was wearing her headband around her neck. A hint of concern could be seen in Hiruzen's aged eyes as he turned to face the four newcomers entering the village. His concern increased even further when he noticed the symbol on their headbands. The Leaf Village emblem was only the swirl with nothing else on the headbands. Additionally, the symbol was etched in red on a black plate, and the cloth was crimson in color, rather than being a metal plate on a blue cloth. Just who are these four exactly? As he watched from his tower while all the other teams made their way to their exam locations, Hiruzen said more to himself than anyone else. In conjunction with the four. Initially, the three genin and their sensei were primarily there for sightseeing as they strolled through Konoha's streets. As they searched everywhere, the boy and the Junin sensei appeared to be quite happy to be here. Conversely, the two girls, especially the second girl, were just glancing around the different areas with a little less zeal. After checking into the hotel, they parted ways, with the second girl and the woman heading in one direction and the first girl and boy heading in another. They had entered the marketplace where various goods were being sold with the first girl and the boy. The girl was merely looking around with her hands behind her back, while the boy was very excited because he had never seen this many merchant areas in his life. Can you believe this, Sano? The boy looked to the now named Sano and began. We're actually taking part in a different village as Chunin right now. Isn't that thrilling? Sano nodded and grinned at him. Yes. That AIM is the person. Sano turned to face the other candidates for this year's Chunin exams as she peered around. When he saw her, one of them smiled at her with a rather sinister look. What's wrong, Sano? AIM questioned his friend and teammate. Sano turned his back on the grass nin and continued to move forward. AIM, nothing too serious. Let's grab a bite to eat. AIM nodded, and the two walked out, leaving little doubt that the grass nin was observing them as they went. The girl and her sensei were strolling along the streets close to some buildings and gated areas when the other two came back. The student, with her hands still behind her head and a bored expression on her face, was staring at the smiling woman. The girl caught her sensei's eye with a yawn. "Oh, are you tired already, Noya?" With a joyful tone, she inquired. Noya tched and just continued walking. "This place is pretty boring, Takara-sensei." Takara just smiled and kept walking while she carried on. "They don't even have very good defenses, really. This is a place where any skilled ninja could easily slip in." "I wouldn't go that far, Noya." With the same smile on her face, Takara turned to face one of the trees and spoke. Noya let out a sigh, knowing full well that someone was tailing them. Noya moved as fast as a flash to face the tree and hurled a kunai at the unlucky ninja spying on them. The figure leapt out of the tree, followed by two more, revealing Sasuke and his two allies before the kunai could get too close. He had armor on and was dressed in all black, giving him a more Anbu appearance. He held the girl's kunai between his fingers on his right hand and grinned at her. "Seems like you need to learn a little lesson since you think the ninja in the village are weak." His voice sounded haughty as he spoke. "I might be willing to be more lenient with you in the exam if you beg and become my pet." "Perhaps." Takara gasped a little at the statement. "It's quite strange that you find yourself in this situation, Noya. Now, what are you going to do?" With a smile, Noya turned to face the Uchiha who was still smirking at her. "Easy, sensei." Her right hand shot up, snagging something in midair. Satoshi and his two companions in the squad maintained their composure, not holding high expectations from an unknown genin from an unnamed village. All of that altered once she completed this. With a strong tug, the kunai in Sasuke's grasp erupted into a tiny flash of flame. Before any significant harm could be done to him, Sasuke dropped the kunai and, along with Sai and the other member of the root, momentarily retreated. Sasuke's hand had only a small, superficial burn. Nothing serious. When Noya pulled her arm back and the kunai retracted to her hand, where it instantly vanished, he looked up and grimaced at her smug smile. Noya turned to face him and waved. "Next time when we meet Uchiha," she began. "I won't be going easy on ya." Takara just shrugged and turned to face the Konoha genin as Noya was leaving. "Well then, good luck when you all begin the exams." The Uchiha were furious when the Junin abruptly left to follow her, but they did notice that a certain Suna Jinchuriki, who had red hair, was observing them. Thus, Naruto and the others desire that one. With a serious tone, she said to herself. "Well, it looks like he's a real piece of sh*t. I will have to find the person who has denigrated the reputation of sealing and castrate them." As she caught up with Noya, she said to herself, this time in a nicer tone. "Yes, the exams this year will definitely be remembered." Aim and Sano had arrived at the most amazing location on Earth, while Noya and Takara dealt with the Uchiha's ego and identified their target. In their perspective, anyway. Ramen Ichiraku. The wonderful sense of Kami's gift to the world struck the two as soon as they entered the stand, striking them like a strong wind jutsu. Before the teenage girl behind the counter noticed them, the two stood there for a moment just enjoying the smell. Ayame, she laughed a little to herself when she noticed the two ninja from the other village standing there, their faces showing a mix of delight and sweet relief. Ahem. She began by grabbing their attention and grinning amiably at them. "Would you two like something to eat?" Aim and Sano went straight to the counter and started placing ridiculously large orders for bowls of ramen. The fact that the two ordered so many bowls and consumed them all so easily startled Ayame and her father Tucci. They were reminded of a certain blonde who would act in a similar manner. Thankfully, they could keep up with all of the orders the two unidentified nin were giving them because they were so accustomed to working quickly with Naruto at the time. By the end of it all, the two had consumed 60 bowls of various flavors of ramen. With a sigh of satisfaction from their delicious dinner, Aim and Sano both reclined in their seats. This was the best place on Earth, in their opinion. The Ichiraku family was quite surprised by how much the two had eaten, but they also knew that today would be a good payday for them. "That was very delicious, Tucci." Aim opened his mouth to speak, pulling a scroll from a pocket and giving it to the man. "This should cover the food, and a little something from an old friend of yours." Tucci accepted the scroll despite the two ramen cooks' bewildered looks in their eyes. Before departing to get ready for the tests, Sano and Aim both bowed to the two and thanked them for the food. With a shrug, Tucci acknowledged the boy's meaning and unfolded the scroll, causing 7 stacks of Ryo to materialize in a cloud of smoke. When Tucci and Ayame noticed a letter in one of the stacks, they were both taken aback by what they saw, something that could easily pay for the 60 bowls and more. After pulling out the paper, they read its contents and were astounded by what they saw. Greetings, Ichirakus. Aim and Sano would have both left by the time you read this. Since I haven't seen you two in a while, I wanted to express my gratitude for all of your kindness toward me in my younger years. I hope this makes up for everything, even though I know it might be a bit much considering how much food I used to get from you guys. I'm doing great right now because I'm with my family, and in the upcoming months, we have big plans. You shouldn't be concerned about me because I will never again be harmed. I appreciate everything that you two have done. Stark, Naruto Uzumaki. The Ichirakus were taken aback upon reading this, as they had long assumed their most cherished client was lost for good. He appeared to be doing well and to have a family as well. Ayame burst into happy tears, and Tucci grinned at the idea of the boy finding happiness at last. The following day, the 3 from the unidentified village enter the academy with only a few glares from the Konoha residents as the genin hopefuls head there escorted by their respective sensei. Word spread that one of them had damaged the last Uchiha yesterday, which was the cause of those glares. The civilian council attempted to have the group placed under arrest for assault and then locate their village in order to impose severe fines on the members. Luckily, Hiruzen talked them out of it by pointing out that fining other villages for mild altercations would give a bad impression to prospective customers. The council eventually gave in, but only after requesting that one of Danzo's root keep a close eye on the group, a request the elderly Warhawk was only too glad to grant in order to protect potential new recruits to his program. Moreover, he had no knowledge of the village from which these 3 genin and their junin originated, so they constituted an unnecessary hindrance to him. Whatever. The trio of genin advanced towards the academy's entrance, where Aim cocked his head in perplexity. Their academy is super small compared to ours. Yeah, I guess it is. Noya yawned and answered in a bored tone, drawing a few more glaring looks from others. Sano, grinning at the thought of facing formidable ninja from a different village, took a moment to scan her surroundings. Just then, as the 3 moved into a larger room with stairs close to the wall, a new voice started to rush towards them. Excuse me. The voice was assured but polite in tone. The 3 turned to see a small child with wrappings around his hands, a bowl haircut, green spandex suit on, and a determined expression in his eyes. It was then that they saw his eyebrows, and Noya started laughing. Ha 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 ha. How come they have eyebrows? Ha 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 ha. Having never seen anything like that on a person before, Aim arched an eyebrow. Sano was trying not to laugh, even though she had a smile on her face. The teenager in front of them then pulled himself together to complete the task at hand despite Noya's laughter. I am Rock Lee, and I wish to challenge the one who defeated Sasuke Uchiha yesterday. His loud voice caught the team's attention. Noya stepped forward, a feral smile on her face, and stopped laughing. Oh? You want to fight me, then? Lee lowered his gaze to adopt his own stance. If you are the one who defeated the Uchiha, then yes, I would like to. Though she didn't understand why bushy brows over here believed she had defeated him, Noya's smile broadened as she realized this guy was more of a challenge than the other one from yesterday. Yes, it embarrassed him. Not defeated him yet. Well, she thought to herself as she assumed a posture that Lee had never seen her adopt. She was almost crouching, as she was low to the ground. Her left leg was bent forward, her arms bent at the elbows, her left leg open, and her right leg bowed to the point where it was nearly touching the floor. Overall, Lee was perplexed by this specific stance because he had never witnessed someone adopt it. Noya kept grinning at him and gestured for him to come here with her open left hand. Lee chose to disregard the gesture and hurried in to put an end to this right away. Noya moved faster than even a taijutsu expert, as she lunged forward in an instant and struck Lee in the chest with her right knee. Her strike was so strong that Lee was pushed back and landed in a heap a short distance away from her. This time, Noya landed in a true crouch and straightened to cast a disgruntled glance at the teenager. All that bravado and you go down at the first strike? Her teammates followed her as she tucked her hands in her pockets and turned to head for the stairs. If that's your best bushy brows, then don't come at me again until you get some real skill. For a moment, the pain was sudden and sharp, and Lee was clutching his chest. He saw his teammate 1010 approach him, her face showing concern. Neji was not at all fond of this one after witnessing what had happened to his teammate. He decided there and then that it was his destiny to beat them all as he watched the team from an unknown ascend the stairs, unconcerned about what had just transpired. However, a pair of Sharingan eyes watched the one-sided fight with mild irritation from the shadows. One move wasn't enough for him, though, so he was expecting more from that girl so he could have it. At least he is aware of her speed in spite of everything else. That would come in handy when he takes that bitch down to the Uchiha Elite where she belongs. Away from the actual testing area. The extremely weak genjutsu on the second floor offended the team. Aim shook his head, knowing that those who didn't pass that section of the test would have a hard time if they couldn't solve the simplest illusion ever. Oh well, he thought. They moved to the entrance and entered, whereupon they were hit by a murderous intent right away. Any young ninja potential who dared to try to outsmart any of the mass group of genin from various villages was intended to be intimidated. They did not anticipate that one of the three would chuckle subtly before it developed into a loud, menacing laugh. Noya shielded her eyes from the meek demonstration of power these genin possessed. Did her village's genin really differ so much from other people's genin? Neither did she really care nor could she really tell. Aim couldn't help but wonder why all these guys, with such little power, were doing this. When compared to the people they had previously trained with, this was nothing. Hell, Aim nearly passed out from the sheer power that the Hollow Four emanated when they first met. But, at this moment, it all seemed insignificant. Sano was beaming as she let loose some of her own killer intent and decided to have a little fun herself. It was incredibly, chillingly calm, but the power they felt from her caused the pressure to increase and the genin to scatter quickly. Noya looked at Sano and Aim and broke out into a fit of laughter. Man, I needed that laugh. Sano loosened her intention to kill them after the genin left them alone, and the three made the decision to approach this exam as skillfully as they could. Aim noticed one of the many stares they got, even though they were aware of them. When he saw the white-haired, glasses wearing genin, he realized that was the person he was going to target later. Death Forest. Just before the written examination started, 4 shadows emerged from a thick branch that overlooked the majority of the area from a high altitude. They were standing there waiting, their masks on, hoods up, wearing white cloaks. Soon enough, Stark settled into a comfortable position and started. With the exception of Ulquiorra, who was concentrating on the task at hand, the other girls watched him. Things will be getting a whole lot more interesting. Following the test, the other genin were trailing the newly appointed proctor of the subsequent exam section in the direction of the Forest of Death. She was obviously unusual because she had broken through the glass and was wearing a big banner announcing her as a beautiful, single woman. Noya chuckled at her arrival, Sano shook her head, and Aim just ignored her while keeping a wary eye on his prey. Speaking of targets, Kabuto became aware of the infrequent glances the new student was sending his way. At Sasuke Uchiha's request, he attempted to use his cards on him and his teammates prior to the exam, but nothing appeared other than their first names. In any case, the remaining genin followed Anko into the forest for the second exam portion after the majority of their teams failed the written portion. The majority of people found the Forest of Death to be a terrifying sight. The strange animal screams, the foreboding atmosphere behind the metal gates, and the clear warnings not to enter all contribute to the overall eerie atmosphere of the location. Anko continued by going over the guidelines for this section of the exam and the idea that everyone was up for grabs. A few people in the group thought this was a great chance. Sasuke's personal retaliation against Noya for dehumanizing him the other day is the first. Kabuto was the one to discover the reason he was being watched earlier. One like Gaara, who takes no safety measures and just wants to kill everything that gets in his way. And one to make his impression on a particular genin. As she spoke, Sano and Noya looked up at the forest above them and caught a fleeting glimpse of white before it vanished. The Hollow Four had given them their orders, and they were aware that the signal would be lit if something went wrong. Once more, Aim caught sight of his target and saw, out of the corner of his eye, that Kabuto was grinning directly at him. Aim sighed, knowing that his task would be extremely annoying, but he had orders and he was going to follow them to the letter. Alright then. Anko explained the rules and then spoke up again. Now that is all done with, I'm gonna need you all to sign these waivers. She indicated a big table covered in piles of papers. A genin from Grass made the obvious decision to inquire. What are those for? A cruel smile came over Anko's face, making some of the genin shudder. These are agreement papers that say that Konoha is not responsible for any deaths during this part of the exam. As everyone began to nervously sign the papers, she kept smiling. After each person signed, she turned to face each one of them. Have fun, and try not to die. Her voice sounded almost like a song. Each generation team took up their designated spots and awaited the sound of the horn, which signaled the start of the game, which was essentially a war game. Despite receiving a heaven scroll, the Uzumaki team ignored it because they had other tasks to complete. It was Noya's responsibility to assess the remaining Konoha genin's abilities. Naruto assigned her this duty because he wanted to see if any of them had grown more powerful in the years since he, Sakura, and Hinata had passed away. Noya was thrilled to a certain extent because she had already easily defeated two and was now eager for some serious competition. It was Sano's responsibility to locate Tsuna's jinchuriki and bring him with her. The boy was easily located by the Uzumaki spy network, which also provided the teenager with a comprehensive description of him and his sand related abilities, so it was not difficult to determine which one he was. Although Sano did want to see his seal and determine what was wrong with it, this provided her with all the information she needed to give the red-haired boy a countermeasure. She could tell that the boy's seal was horribly placed because she was a seal expert as well, albeit not as strong as the masters in her village. It was discovered that Kabuto is an employee of the Snake Sanin, or Orochimaru, so Aim's mission was to track him down and destroy him. Aim, in spite of his outward look, was the most knowledgeable of the three when it came to breaking down and incapacitating the human body. He dedicated his life to learning how to eliminate a person's certain qualities with a few blows, much like the Hyuga clan, except that his attacks were more intended to kill than anything else. It would indicate that Naruto's assumption was correct and the snake was in fact present if Kabuto had been present during the exams working for Orochimaru. Aim would have to use caution when handling this one. The three teenagers vanished in a swirl of water for Aim, fire for Sano, and black leaves for Noya as soon as the alarm went off for the genin to move forward. The few Chunin guards who witnessed them doing this were taken aback by this and began to wonder about the identity and origins of the children. With the senseis of Junin. Every Junin in the room watched the real oddity team vanish in a different form of Shunshin as the genin ran, or, in the case of the Suna team, walked, into the forest. What in the hell? Everyone was left wondering who those three were when one of the Iwa instructors spoke up in a shocked tone. How do genin already know how to use Shunshin this early? Kurenai, Konoha's genjutsu mistress, primarily asked her allies. No idea. Asuma turned to see Takara observing everything on the screens with a passive attitude, and he began. Perhaps we should ask her. As the other Konoha senseis glanced over, he nodded toward her. They observed that she was beaming the entire time as they watched her. As if she was merely ecstatic about something they were unaware of. The Konoha Junin in the room, as well as a few others from other villages, found it a little unsettling. Kakashi made the decision to make the demand for clarification. As he spoke, he approached her with a menacing scowl. What exactly have you teaching those genin of yours? His tone was solemn because he did not want his esteemed pupil to unintentionally cross paths with any of these three. Takara turned to face him, not even deterred by his scowl. I simply taught them how to be real ninja. The one-eyed Junin found herself a little irritated by the expression she gave when speaking those words. In our village, kids learn how to fight and defend themselves at a very young age. At 4 years old, we start teaching them taijutsu. Gradually, we progress to genjutsu at 6, ninjutsu at 8, and fuinjutsu at 10. They then pursue any further education they choose on their own. Really quite simple. And what about their childhoods? Kurenai was the next to speak, lamenting that they had started their children so young. You're making them ninja too early in their lives. Takara just gave the genjutsu mistress a small smile and went on. That is the way of our village, so we can never suffer like we have in the past to the ones we once trusted. Her grin hardened into a scowl that took the Konoha crew by surprise. Without another word, she left the room. When he ran out to confront her and demand a genuine explanation, Kakashi was furious to discover that she had vanished. What the hell? To himself, he said. There was no doubt he would have to tell Danzo. San about this woman and her genin. Returning with the test. After landing in a clearing not far from the gates, the three Uzumakis stood for a brief period of time. Sano was the one to speak up. Everyone has their tasks. Let's finish them up. She finished there, and they all nodded before heading back out into their own shunshin. In companionship with AIM. As directed by Orochimaru, their leader, Kabuto and his group had been making their way through the forest by means of the tree branches. The snake Sanin was told to take the relevant scroll and move forward without confronting any Konoha nin. Dosu and his group would handle everything else. Though he followed the instructions, Kabuto couldn't shake the strange feeling he had about the boy who had earlier stared him down. Especially when he was unable to locate any information about the boy or his team, it unnerved Kabuto. Who were these people, and why had they come here in the first place? Too much is unknown to the teenager. A massive torrent of water rushed toward him and his team, interrupting his thoughts. Each of them leapt aside in a different direction. Unwise decision. One team member landed on a different branch, some distance away from the others. Who in the hell did that? As he was trapped in a water ball, he had no time to wonder. He attempts to escape with his own weapons in an attempt to take the chakra inside, but he is startled to discover that he is immobile. A portion of the water had become stuck to his limbs, rendering him motionless. The other team member touched down on the edge of a tree and began searching for his comrades. At that moment, he became aware of a figure that was in front of him. Who do you think you are attacking us? With a shout, he withdrew a kunai and charged the silhouetted figure. He realized they were motionless as he drew near, prepared to take this person's life. He realized that what he thought was a human body was actually just a mass of water as he stopped short of delivering the fatal blow. Darn. Speaking from above him was a voice. When the sound nin looked up, he saw that boy Kabuto was preoccupied with his inverted position on the branch. I was hoping you would run into it to make things easier. He gave a shrug. Oh well. Before he could say anything more, the mass of water came alive and quickly imprisoned him inside, just like his other teammate. Now, time for the real target. AIM said this, then heard something. Looking for me. Speaking from behind the Uzumaki, Kabuto used a chakra scalpel to hit him in the back. As the boy dropped from the tree branch and hit the ground below, he grinned. I should have known you were going to come after me, but this was almost too easy to put into words. When the boy struck the ground hard and raised dust, he grinned. I'll now return you to Orochimaru Sama to see what exactly you are aware of. As the dust began to settle after he leapt off the branch and landed close to the crater, he smirked to himself when he realized that nobody else was there save for a puddle of water. What? I will give you this. Kabuto turned to see the boy smirking as he leaned on a tree and heard AIM's voice from behind. You're good at stealth, and any regular genin to even Chunin would have been dead from that strike. He straightened up and squinted at the teenage girl with silver hair. Kabuto assumed a ready position, chakra scalpel ready. However, I've received training from individuals who understand how to conceal everything from their rival in order to win. The sounds of their own heartbeat, their breathing, their scent, and their feet hitting the ground. AIM clenched his hands together. You know only one, and that's why you failed Kabuto Yakushi. So you know me then. Kabuto made an effort to maintain appearances and perhaps elicit more information from the boy. If you don't mind me asking, since you know my name, what's yours? AIM gave a headshake. Sorry, but you nor Orochimaru will get to know that. Kabuto became more and more surprised that this brat was aware of his leader. All bets were off now as he easily reached Junin levels as he charged at the boy at his true speed. AIM had already broken one hand seal when he extended his arm to strike the boy in the chest and put an end to him. Kabuto froze in place at that moment, just millimeters away from making contact. W. What? Through gritted teeth, he spoke. Did you know that various parts of the human body contain water, Kabuto? San? He took a small step back and asked AIM. It varies for each, like the skin containing 64%. When he performed a second hand seal, Kabuto felt as though his skin was boiling. Muscles and kidneys contained 79%. He performed another seal, and Kabuto screamed as his muscles began to tear apart and rebuild themselves because of his regeneration. Lungs are about 83%. After another seal, Kabuto started choking on something he couldn't identify. Even bones have at least 31% in them. Kabuto cried out in agony, his bones breaking in different places and another seal breaking. Sakura was observing everything from a treetop perch, donning her disguise and attire. Even though she was only present to watch the collection after everything was finished, the boy's prowess with water jutsu and seals amazed her. It seems that when he was younger, he was the best at using water of anyone. Hinata was the only person who could now surpass his abilities. Below, Kabuto's body continued torn apart and reassembled, leaving him in excruciating pain. Even though he had repeatedly drowned, had his kidneys destroyed, suffered torn muscles, and had broken bones at different angles, he remained conscious and was giving the boy a stern look with his gritted teeth. And lastly, Aim said, a tiny smile on his lips, did you know that the human brain and ears are made up of 73% water? At those words, Kabuto became very upset and horrifiedly observed the boy perform one final seal. At that moment, the teenager's heart and brain just burst apart, leaving him lifeless on the floor. Aim let out a breath, undid his jutsu, and instantly passed out from sheer fatigue. Sakura caught him in her arms just as he was about to fall. Impressive. Even though the boy was knocked out, she spoke through her mask. She threw him over her shoulder and went to lie next to Kabuto. She was about to walk away when she grabbed it by the back of the neck. Stop right there. She heard a voice shout at her. She turned to see that Kabuto's two teammates were waiting for a fight, staring her down. Sakura turned to leave again, giving them no attention. At that point, one of them threw a kunai behind her head. The metal object just bounced off the back of her head. She didn't even try to stop it or dodge it. The two were taken aback by what they witnessed, and were even more so when she completely vanished. The next thing they knew, their heads were completely detached from their bodies. Fools. Speaking in a sonito, Sakura departed the area entirely, leaving Aim and Kabuto behind. This was just the beginning of what lay ahead.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.